Welcome to tonight's study session for April 21st, 2025. Welcome to the Westminster City Council study session of April 21st, 2025. Thank you for joining us. We thank you for coming and would like to remind all in attendance that our meetings are subject to the rules of decorum that are posted inside the chamber doors. These rules are in effect while all meetings are in session, as well as during breaks and transitions between meetings. We want to make sure all feel welcome and remind all that there is an expectation that no attendee shall disrupt this meeting and that threats and intimidation are prohibited. No attendee shall engage in audible expressions of support or opposition for any speaker. Signs and placards are prohibited, and all attendees shall remain seated in the seats provided, not in the aisles, nor shall the doorways be blocked. City Council reports. Mayor Pro Tem.
Nothing for this week.
Councilor DeMott.
I attended the Butterfly Pavilion event with the mayor and Councilor Carmelia. It was a good event until the power went out at the end, but they were able to go through with the paddle raiser, but it was a lot of fun. So they talked a lot about the efforts they're doing in Mexico to preserve the monarch. So it's a good event. If you didn't get to go, I recommend you go to their website and see how you can participate in that project.
That's right, Eileen.
So my husband had surgery this week. It went well, so I didn't go to a lot of things. I did go with the mayor to see the gentleman, Jose Juarez Martinez, turned 100. They think he might even be older than that because we don't have exact records, but I did ask him what his secret to longevity was, and he said tequila and nuts. And he doesn't like vegetables. So just a tidbit from him. He was cute, and we enjoyed the visit with his family.
Councilor Carmelia.
I was going to mention happy 100th birthday to Jose. That's really exciting, and a shout out to our community for inviting us. I happened to stop by right after you had left, so I just said hi to the family, and that was really nice. And so I'm glad you were there for the proclamation. I also attended the Monarch Migration event at the Butterfly Pavilion that Councilor DeMott mentioned. And I just wanted to bring up some of the points that they made, which was that the migration of monarchs is down nearly 99% from what it once was, and that has happened in just a couple decades. And I bring that up to say that there is much that we can do as municipalities to help our invertebrates in general, and I think there's a lot we've already been doing, so I'm really proud of that. And we've been doing really great with our plantings around this town hall specifically, but also throughout the city. And I think it's important to just verbally bring this up as a reminder that we all have a responsibility into this topic, because these butterflies are pollinating our food, which feeds us, and we have the responsibility to keep them going. So I just remind us to be mindful when we're planning our city in how we do it mindfully, and also reduce the pesticides wherever and however we can, and make sure we're being responsible about that. And I think that there's a lot we can do with our neighbors. We can bring it up. There's no reason we can't be bringing this up and saying, what more can we do here? I did stop by the Prost ribbon cutting for a short bit. That was really great. They've got a lot going down. If you want to find a good brewery in Westminster to go to, that's it. I also had the RTC, the Regional Transportation Committee. We just once again honed in on funding. We're trying to figure out what different representatives have an appetite for with funding resources. And so we just keep kind of continuing to have that discussion around our transit needs when it comes to our safety and decongestion, prioritizing what is it that we want to prioritize, and then how do we fund those needs. I think that this whole year, it looks like to me that there's a lot of planning going on around the budget in general. And then the CC4CA did reach out, I think, to all of council to testify for Embodied Carbon Reduction Act, SB 25-182. I'm on the slate to testify tomorrow for that, and so I will let you all know how that goes.
No update this week. Councilor Azadi?
Oh yeah, I wanted to bring up one thing. So I did 4 hours of the global cleanup on Saturday, and staff. So that was the first time I did via the Westminster volunteer setup, and it's amazing. So Hayden Parish Martha Hines, that whole crew. I just wanted to give them a shout out. They do an amazing job. There's a whole system. It's very efficient how they organize the volunteers. So if you're listening, please give them my regards. That was really well done. And I think, so you know how we have what was the total dollar amount, Jody, on the money the volunteers generate for us with their work? I forget what the dollar number was, in the millions or something.
It's $1 million something.
It's very high.
Save us, yes.
I think there's a lot more that's not counted because there are a lot of volunteers throughout the year that I hear about that participate in Westminster volunteer events, but not via the official channel, not registered. So that money is a lot, and I just want to thank staff for what they do there.
And they moved the celebration to this Saturday.
Yeah, the lunches was postponed due to weather, but then the weather turned out to be great on Saturday. It was a great day to actually do it.
Last week, city manager and I had our mayor-manager talk. Mile High Flood District was Wednesday, and Mile High Flood is part of our partnership with Big Dry Creek that is happening behind our rec center, and they just do great work across the entire Metro District, and it always amazes me when I see those slides every month, how many waterways we have going through the Metro region. Butterfly Pavilion, you've heard about, it was fantastic. Jeffco Mayor's Lunch, it was last week was our week to get together and chit chat, and Jose's birthday party was great. He added that a little bit of his Indian blood helped him to get to 100. And he talked about why he thought he was older was because how many leap years he's lived through, and that's an extra day, so he was sure he was over 100. He had great humor. It was fun, and the family really appreciated us bringing him a proclamation. So, city manager.
Thank you. I do have a report for this evening, so if I can get the first slide, please. All right, and second slide, which was already discussed, I just wanted to highlight the Great Global Cleanup has been extended due to what looked like inclement weather coming in quickly. The event got extended through to April 26th, which I think is good news for our community and our volunteers. So it's still open. Please gather a group of family or friends if you haven't already done it, and register with the city. And you can pick up trash in your designated area any day all the way up to April 26th. And as Councillor Izadi noted, the volunteer celebration did get rescheduled to this coming Saturday, April 26th, at the Central Square Park with free lunch from 11 to 1 p.m. So that's downtown Plaza, as some will know it as. So downtown Westminster from 11 to 1, and you can come and get a free lunch as a volunteer. Next slide, please. This one is pretty cool. This is a little known part of the city that we don't talk about very much, and that's the city's forestry team and our fire department partnership. So in addition to all the work that they do to collaborate on mitigating fire in our open spaces and throughout our community, our firefighters and forestry staff recently completed their annual arborist rescue training, which is a collaboration that began a decade ago. The trainings demonstrate strong interdepartmental teamwork and innovation despite limited industry guidance for these challenging incidents. And this year was facilitated by forestry's very own Brian McCoy and former forestry member Matt Moritz, who is now representing the fire department. So this is very progressive training that our two departments work together on, and it's not an area that's well regulated. So this is a strong Westminster initiative. I did want to take the opportunity to highlight that the two departments work very closely together on wildfire mitigation in primarily our open space and park areas, and are out there right now doing tactical seasonal perimeter cuts, enhancing buffer spaces and defensible spaces, and that they are regularly meeting in the field with residents and other private property owners on collaborative maintenance strategies. And if anyone fits in that category, please let us know, and we'll have staff come out and have a look at the areas if you abut a wildland or open space area. Our professionals will come out and have a look at that and then mitigate if there's mitigation required. Next slide, please. Also, pretty exciting week Arts Week, April 26th through May 3rd. So please join an extensive citywide celebration of makers, creators, and artists across our community. Arts Week is a collaborative partnership with the North Metro Arts Alliance, Westminster Public Schools, the Palatiers Art Club, which is Westminster's own, and the Orchard Town Center. So that includes also over 30 local businesses participate in this big Arts Week. You can view the schedule online at our website, westminsterco.gov/artsweek. Next slide, please. I have one more slide on city updates, and these are two initiatives by our police department. The first one we've mentioned before, Sirens and Syrup at IHOP, and that's on April 23rd from 9 till 11 a.m. And this is Westminster Police Department launching for the very first time the Sirens and Syrup event. And that's at 4730 West 120th. That's the IHOP there. And that's Westminster PD teaming up with Broomfield PD for a fun morning filled with good food and conversation. And the chief asked me to highlight that any guest and every guest will receive 2 free pancakes for showing up and participating in that.
Is he cooking?
I don't think our chief is cooking. I think it's actually the IHOP master pancake chefs. And then also, this is our own initiative. Westminster PD continues its outreach with our community with Coffee with a Cop, and that's on Friday, April 25th from 9 to 11. And that's this time it's at the Target at 10445 Reed Street. So the Coffee with a Cop outreach is designed to build community by allowing opportunities to ask questions, voice concerns, and get to know the officers in the neighborhood. So if you're in that neighborhood, you don't even have to be from that area. You can also jump in. The officers would love to see you. Next slide, please. This week, some other events coming up. Tomorrow night, April 22nd, is Planning Commission right here in City Council Chambers, and that starts at 7 p.m. On Wednesday night, the Historic Landmark Board is meeting in City Hall, as well as a Teams hybrid option, and that starts at 7 p.m. There's also, as I mentioned, the Sirens and Syrup, 9 till 11 at IHOP at West 120th. On Friday, again, the Coffee with a Cop. I'm going to hit it twice, 9 till 11 at the Target at 10445 Reed Street. Saturday is also a busy day in Westminster. The car seat clinic with our fire department is from 8:30 to noon at Fire Station number 2. So come and learn how to correctly install a car seat, and that's actually a skill that's a bit tricky. So learn from the professionals, and it's free, of course, to anybody. So Westminster residents are encouraged to drop by, learn how to install a car seat correctly. Westminster Arts Week, as I highlighted, that starts Saturday, May 3rd, and that runs throughout the city. And then on we have our Earth Day celebration, which is the 2025 Earth Day, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. on that Saturday, and that's at Bison Ridge Recreation Center in Commerce City. So we're flagging that as a joint effort with our friends in Commerce City. We also have National Prescription Drug Take-Back Day, and that's at our very own Public Safety Center right here beside City Hall from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. on Saturday, April 26th. So that's where members of our community bring in expired prescription drugs, and our professionals will take care of it from there. And then, of course, as I mentioned a little earlier, Great Global Cleanup lunch has been moved to 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. at downtown Westminster. Next slide, please. For tonight, we have, it is a City Council study session. There are 3 presentations to start out with. The first is a proclamation for Small Business Week. This doesn't look right.
That's next week.
Sorry, I jumped it. Next slide. We lost this week. That went missing. Not on this printout. All right, let me read off the screen. Information only is a draft ordinance amending the Westminster Code, updating the liquor licensing code. Next, we have 4 presentations tonight. A presentation regarding front range passenger rail, and I would like to thank and welcome and greet our CDOT friends who have joined us this evening for this part of the night, so we'll get to CDOT pretty early on here. After that is a presentation of the city's landscape services, programs, and HOA support initiatives, followed by a discussion on directing staff to draft an ordinance to ban the sale of live animals in pet shops in the city. And that will be followed by a discussion on the city's Woman Creek Reservoir Authority property agreement. That's a verbal discussion. There's no accompanying memo on that one. And we will follow the evening with 2 executive sessions. The first will be discussing a strategy and progress on proposed agreements for the Schoenberg farm property, and then discussion of a personnel matter, which is the quarterly check-in between City Council and the City Manager. Next slide, please. So next meeting, this is the one I jumped the gun on. We have 3 presentations next Monday. The first is Proclamation for Small Business Week. The second is a proclamation for Mental Health Awareness Month, and then followed by a proclamation for Provider Appreciation Day, and that's care providers is what that proclamation is for. There will be 2 information-only items in your packet. One will be on our water bill assistance programs, and that's an update. And we'll also be providing an update on our water conservation and efficiency program. So those 2 will come to you together. Some pretty exciting progress in both of those areas. On consent agenda next week are 6 items, including 2 second readings, and there's an old business and passage on second reading for Councillors Bill number 7, which is a comprehensive plan amendment and consideration of a preliminary development plan amendment for Uplands Filing 3, Block 1, Tract A, and Block 3, and that's the one that was addressed recently in City Council public hearing. Next slide, please. And finally, the other thing happening that night is a new business under our Westminster Economic Development Authority meeting, and that is authorization to execute an agreement with the Westminster Chamber of Commerce for downtown Westminster activation, and that's following City Council's direction on that matter. Next slide. You can reach me at 303-658-2003, and anyone trying to do so last week, thank you for your patience. I was really loaded last week, so I will get back to you. You can email me also at jandrews@westminsterco.gov, and you can follow the city on any one of our 4 social media accounts: Facebook, Instagram, X, and Nextdoor. That's all I have. Thank you.
Any questions? Councillor Ireland?
Isn't there an Arbor Day event this week too? That was not up there.
That should be. We'll push that information out. There is an Arbor Day event. That would have been nice to tie in with the Arbor Day training that I announced. Okay, we'll get that. Thank you. We'll push that out to the folks.
Councillor Ireland or Councillor Camelia?
And then thank you so much. I meant to mention Arts Week. Thank you for bringing that up. That is starting Saturday, April 26th. That's getting going. And there were a couple different events that I will be at, and the meetings are often overlapping with my work hours. Do you mind terribly if I can ask you to help schedule a meeting with yourself and Kate Cook and I? Just make sure that I know everywhere I'm supposed to be and what my responsibilities are. And I'll make sure that I announce them all next week.
Okay, we'll have someone follow up and get that calendar sorted out.
Perfect. Thank you.
And confirming that Arbor Day tree planting event is on Thursday, and for us that's at Amherst Park at 10:30, it looks like, which is open to the community. That's our celebration of Arbor Day. That's what I have there.
And do you have anything about your draft ordinance, or just information only? If anybody has any questions? For the updating liquor license?
Yeah, any questions or comments on item 2A? Otherwise, that was information only. Okay.
We're good. We just want to make sure.
Thank you.
Presentations. Presentation of update on the State of Colorado Front Range Passenger Rail Initiative and the Joint Service Plan, including station location and city connections of regional transit. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Need another chair.
We'll get it right. We'll get it done. We'll get it done. We just want to make sure everybody has a seat at the table. Mayor Pro Tem, councilors, thank you so much for having us today. I'm going to kick us off, but then I'm going to turn it over to our guests from the state. Let me first introduce Diane Barrett, who is the project lead, talking about Front Range Passenger Rail and Joint Service Overview, which you'll get tonight. This is Brandon Schaefer. He's the special advisor for transit and rail, both work for the state. So these will be this is staff's points of contact that I'm working with at the local level with them. As I said before, we're going to start with a briefing from the two of them to talk about joint service that kind of lays the foundation about what the state is interested in looking at. Then I will jump back in and we'll bring this conversation from the state down to the local level and have a conversation about how this does or does not impact the city, and then open it up and we'll have a good conversation from there. So if we will go ahead, you can hit the first slide and get going.
All right. I'd just like to say that I was hit with a bad cold on Friday morning, and it's getting better, but my voice isn't very reliable, and Brandon is better at this than I am anyway, so you're lucky.
Good evening, Council. My name is Brandon Schaefer, Special Advisor for Passenger Rail and Transit. Get to work with Diane Barrett as a colleague. I'm really pushing forward passenger rail here on the Front Range. What I'll get started with here are just kind of what are the basic assumptions of joint service. Joint service is a little bit different. It's a hybrid approach to Front Range passenger rail. Some of the foundational assumptions here is that there's only one operator running the service between Denver and Fort Collins. There's only one access agreement between the state and BNSF to allow for passenger rail service. And then one route, which would follow RTDs, or one alignment, following RTD's B line before transferring to the BNSF freight rail line from, I think, Broomfield all the way up to Fort Collins. Just by having one operator, it just makes sure that there aren't multiple people on the line at the same time, makes it easier for dispatching. And then also just for an access agreement, making sure that there's only one instead of Front Range Passenger Rail holding it, RTD holding one, and the state holding one as well. So we really want to drive for efficiency here. Another key assumption that we make for joint service is that this is a starter service meant to be built upon. So joint service really is the building block to Front Range Passenger Rail and the full build out from north to south, and that this could be a standalone service or merged in the future and acquired by Front Range Passenger Rail once they go to the ballot and successfully pass a ballot initiative to have a sales tax pass with funding down the road. The other really big assumption, a really great report that came out on March 1, is that joint service could be funded today with existing resources between the state and between RTD, which is really, really exciting. This really does pave the way for the future. Joint service would actually make a lot of the capital improvements needed for Front Range Passenger Rail, taking that off of their side of the ledger and having the state and RTD make those first. This also could be acquired or stand alone by itself by Front Range Passenger Rail. So all of the parties at the table, which is our RTD, CTIO, which is the investment arm of CDOT, and then the Clean Transit Enterprise and our FRPR are all the parties at the table that are working with Diane and really coming together to get this project off of the ground. The other thing that we just want to emphasize again is that this is using his existing resources. We would not need to go to the ballot for a sales tax increase or ask the approval of voters right now at this time, which is really exciting as well, especially in this environment that folks have a little bit of hesitation about the economy. So this is also very exciting as well. Moving into this slide, I want to walk through this with you all because there are a couple different concepts that you all are probably familiar with. First, I'll start out with joint service, which is what we are presenting on tonight, is really a hybrid service between commuter rail and intercity passenger rail. Now, what are the differences there? Commuter rail really serves, as you probably are familiar with, the RTD system, which is a regional, whereas intercity connects multiple cities for about 100 miles plus in any given state. And so this would connect Denver to Fort Collins in the initial phase. We would have 8 stations, which are located there to the right of the screen for you. We would have 3 daily round trips, and we would have service starting by January 1st of 2029. Now that is a very fast timeline to start with, especially in rail world, but we are making significant progress on a very short timeline here. RTD's Peak Rail, this is a commuter service that connects Denver to Longmont. So this is the existing Fast Tracks program that you all are familiar with. This envisions 10 station stops, and so from Denver Union Station all the way up to Longmont are all the stations that they would serve. And they have this peak rail service feasibility study where they would have 3 morning runs and 3 afternoon runs. And their cost is about $52 to $56 million by themselves alone. You'll see that the O&M and debt service for joint service is around $83 million. But the difference there is that the state is a co-investor on that service, bringing down the cost for RTD quite significantly. And then what you all are also probably familiar with is Front Range Passenger Rail. They are the intercity passenger rail service that would connect Fort Collins all the way down to Pueblo and then Trinidad and beyond. Their service development plan, which is just a different way of saying a business plan, is currently being drafted with partnership with the Federal Railroad Administration. And so we don't have a cost yet or a frequency, but they are going to be releasing a report fairly shortly, kind of detailing what they're studying as alternatives right now. Just to show you all here, the annual cost of joint service starting in 2029 is around $83 million a year. What you see is $32 million in operations and maintenance, and then about 51 is what we're assuming in a debt service that would be shared by all parties at the table. And then looking out to a 25-year horizon to 2050, you really see it spike a little bit more, but that's only because you have a state of good repair. We want to make sure that the rail and the cars there are taken care of and in good shape. So you have an additional 34 million there. And then shortly after 2050 is when the debt service actually falls off a little bit. So you see that in future years as well.
Just to make sure that everybody's understanding that debt service number incorporates all the construction costs that would have been attributable to the construction.
That's right. Looking here, as we think about our capital stack and our partners at the table with us, we kind of had to look at RTD's 5-year financial forecast to kind of make sure that we knew the health status of their finances. And so what you see here are 2 tables at the top and a pretty large table at the bottom. What I would just say here is that RTD has, over the past board and over the past 5 years now, implemented a really healthy financial strategy to kind of restructure their debt, refinance it with their previous board chair, Eric Davidson. And so you see their reserves actually almost at 100% of their operating budget. So last year they had about 994. And then by the end 2029 here on their 5-year, it drops down to about 848. The biggest thing I would just say here for your attention is the FISA account. So you would see by 2029, there's about $260 million there sitting in that account to help start this service, while they also make really significant capital improvement projects to their system. That's also noted here in purple. And you can see that through their operating reserve as well, making significant drawdowns on that as well to spend. Again, this is just to show you all what the current financial forecast is for joint service. So we kind of just take here, what I would say that's different on this slide than the one I just showed was the revenue. And so in the dark green, what you see is actually the state revenue that we could contribute to a joint effort, whereas the shaded green arrows or green lines is the gap in funding that we have. And so that's what we're currently looking at RTD to help fund. Granted, this came out of a March 1 report demanded by the legislature that really just directed Diane and the parties to really study, do we have enough resources as of today to get this started? And we do. This next phase of research and study is really kind of doubling down on the work and asking RTD where in their budget could this come from? What does the financing really look like? We weren't prepared on March 1 to answer those questions, but we're now pivoting to that. And then again in 2050, just kind of showing the 25-year horizon, what you see there too, as revenue jumps with the state, with the SB 184 funds and SB 230, you see that we have a lot more revenue. But that we still have enough to kind of get this off of the ground pending a successful negotiation with RTD and the parties. The last slide here that I just want to direct your attention to are just the key takeaways. And so if the state were to contribute $42 million, which is the slide or bullet number 3 here, it just leaves about $41 million. What I would direct your attention to are bullets 3 and 4 here. Their peak rail service feasibility of what it would take to go from Denver to Longmont was about $52 to $56 million alone on their own. With the state coming in as a co-investor, that really drops to $41 million and could be even less than that, which is really exciting to get this off of the ground. And this also really sets up Front Range Passenger Rail District to be successful in the future before they go to the ballot, because we know one of the items that hangs around that program is that voters are kind of asking the questions, where is peaks or where is fast tracks at? Where's the authorized funds for that at? This really gets the project started, shovels in the ground, and allows us to proceed and restore faith in RTD and public projects. Nearly all of the infrastructure is built that would benefit FRPR through this, and that we are refining our studies. So we're kind of going back to the principles at RTD, CDOT, and the state to ask, what do we need to study in this next phase? How are we going to define this study, and what are the key deliverables along the way, and when are we going to turn that around? And I would say we are just now kind of coming out of that process right now, but I'll let Diane add anything else.
Can't think of a thing. Questions would be welcome.
And I'll turn it over to Chris.
Thank you. Just so I can get the slides there.
And maybe what we'll do, Council, is Chris will run through some slides, wrap up the presentation,
quick, yeah.
and then open it up for questions and discussion with our CDOT partners.
So I'm going to, forgive me if you will, we were working with our state partners as much as we could last week, and so my slides do a little bit of overlap. So I'm going to skip a few of these early slides because we covered all of this information with Brandon's conversation. Now, so what staff really wanted to do here was to bring this down to the local level and talk about the inclusion of joint service in the city. If we decide that we are going towards the downtown location, which is what staff's recommendation is going to be to you, then it potentially opens up 3 TODs in our city that we can really work on, build up, or maintain. The Westy Station, which is the B-line conclusion right now, which is down at 72nd. The Front Range Passenger Rail / Joint Service Plan, which would be in our downtown area there at 88th and Harlan. And then finally, the Flatiron Flyer stops that are up in the promenade up at Church Ranch and 36. Now, each of those 3 locations gives us 3 unique regional transportation connections that cover both the central, south, and north parts of our city. So, and we really have some good maturity going on with the downtown just a little bit behind, simply because it's only a few years out of the ground in terms of getting all of that development put into play. So once again, this is something that the staff is really going to say that this is where we'd like to put another TOD. This is an area that we've talked about for years, having a rail connection back when Fast Tracks was first passed. It has good transit connections already with the Route 92 and Route 100 that come through the area. The 92 turns up Harlan to get back to 92nd Avenue, where the 100 continues down to Kipling over in Arvada. But I want this point over here in the corner to be made. This is really the first time, with the exception of RTD, because RTD is not a state agency, this is the first time the state has acknowledged that we're going to get a station. And I think that's important to note. And that we really wanted to emphasize that. Again, the TOD aspect is really what the staff is after here, that transit-oriented development, where we're putting all of this resource, multifamily, residential, retail, whatever it is, in a central location that will have great, good transit access. That's really what we're after here. So some of the pros, obviously the downtown development, we talked about that already, and the long time expectation. Again, we've talked about that before. Some of the cons is station spacing to Broomfield. What are our partners to the north going to be doing? We don't know yet. We don't have an answer for that yet. In certain circumstances, I think it's going to work, but Front Range Passenger Rail has rules in terms of station spacing with intercity rail. FRA, the Federal Railroad Administration, does not like stations close by when it comes to intercity rail. So think about the Northeast Corridor, for example, with Amtrak. You don't have stops that just bounce up and down between New York and Boston, or New York, Boston, and Washington. They're spread out over a period of spacing. So it gives us an opportunity to work with Broomfield to see where they want their station to make sure that it doesn't impact where we want to. And again, obviously, given the fact that we'll be building it from out of the ground, there would be a higher cost in order to bring a station to this location. Focusing down at the Westminster rail station, the current terminus of the B-line, that's already there. We've done a lot of work to go ahead and get this place going, and we've got the residential to prove it. We've got retail that's going in. We're looking at developments across Federal Boulevard north of this area on 72nd. So there is a lot of synergy going on right here in this area. It's very well served by the Route 31, which, as a reminder, is the second largest bus route by riders in the RTD system. So it is a huge trunk line for Federal Boulevard going up and down. The 72 also serves this station. Of course, that's a bigger east-west crosstown. And then remember the Federal Boulevard Bus Rapid Transit. I was here in November talking to you about that. That's due to still go to service in January of 2030, and it's on track. They're expecting engineering plans to really be ready to go by this summer. So hopefully we'll get to see some stuff. And just as a little secret, they may actually request that we come and talk to you about that, but don't have a timeline on that yet. But they're saying they want to come back out in the fall to have a conversation with elected officials in each of the member governments that are going through the corridor. Pros here, again, this is all something that we already know. It's an established platform. It's already there. It's well served by bus transit and the future BRT. But one concern that we have is what happens to the B line. If this comes in, if this joint service comes in and we do choose the downtown station, what happens to the B line? It's something that I think staff and our city are going to have to keep an eye on with RTD in the future. Aurora has had some issues in the past with their R line that goes and serves their town center. They've had to go have conversations with RTD and said, hey, guys, you look at all the work that we're doing here, continue the frequencies that we have on the R line. We don't want that to happen here. You know, we don't want to lose our B line, for the lack of a better phrase. And then one more stop as we go up to the promenade area for Flatiron Flyer. This is something that staff has really been digging into recently to improve the overall experience of transit in this area. As you can see by this picture, this is the 36 on-ramp to westbound 36 looking back towards the promenade. There's not much there. It's more of a roof with a couple of trash cans and a bench. And so we really want to improve that transit experience that's there. Perhaps put some bike lockers there, improve the shelter, and then more importantly, in my opinion, to get that multimodal connection to the neighborhoods around. We have new apartments that have gone in, we have the hotel there, we have shopping on both sides, and if you go down the hill, you can get even more. And so I think we've got to look at shuttle systems, micro-mobility, scooters, I mean, any number of different facets that we could put in to improve this stop, to make this our strong third TOD in our city. So next steps, as we mentioned a moment ago when Brandon and Diane finished up their remarks, we need to stay active with them, and I am. We're going to these meetings, we are talking, we are partnering with DRCOG. One of the things that I've noticed and we've talked about before is to improve the frequencies on the B line, the headways. How often does the train come? Too often we have people tell us that they see the brake lights of the train pulling away, and guess what? They're waiting 60 minutes for another train to come. That's not good. That's not how you get people to ride transit, regardless of why they're riding it. It's just not a good way to perform transit. Improve that experience with the Flatiron Flyer, that platform. And then I think this is more of a broad statement. Address the first and last mile at all of our areas, the micro-mobility aspect. All three of these TODs could benefit from micro-mobility, especially downtown, given that we have the tunnel that goes over to the Flatiron Flyer stops on 36 and Sheridan, and the Westie station with all the new things that we're looking at coming in that area, the developments along Federal and the developments along 72nd. So that's where my remarks end right there, and I think now we can open it up for discussion and see where you want to take it. Thank you, Abby.
I know Mayor Pro Tem has some, so go for it.
So I'm on the Front Range Passenger Rail Board, so I'm, just letting that be known. So regarding the joint service, some of my questions are going to be more focused clearly on the discussion at hand in terms of the station, the appropriate station location in Westminster. So as I understand it, the first joint service phase, this one that we can afford, that one is assuming a low platform boarding. And so I'm just curious, in terms of Westminster Station, is that a high platform? Like, how does that even, so with the methodology that we're currently planning, does that even work at Westminster Station?
I'm going to yield to Diane. I don't know the levels and stuff like that when it comes to the actual what car can pull up to the platform. Mm-hmm. So I'm hoping that maybe you can jump in with an answer there.
Yeah, the low level platform is off the main line, so it can accommodate without a change. But there's all kinds of discussion about ways that you make accommodation for places where they are not the same. I am not a trained person, so I didn't want to get too far into this, but there are ways to make a level boarding, even though you're dealing with two different kinds of platform heights. So let's just say that we are doing nothing that would prevent the Front Range Passenger Rail program from going forward. We are in business to make them able to be a part and parcel of what we're putting together. There may be some things that eventually don't end up being the working model, but for now, everything we do can be accommodated with Front Range Passenger Rail. And I hope that you'll ask that question to a trained person so that they can give you a much better answer.
The one, Mayor Pro Tem, the clarification, or just to add to that, augment that answer, think about the Peoria station on the A line where the light rail is coming up from Aurora to meet up with the A line there in North Aurora, kind of Adams County area. One of them is commuter rail, the A line that's going out to the airport. The other vehicle is a light rail, so it's going to be downboard where you walk up onto the vehicle. And so you have to come down off of the high platform for commuter rail, cross over the tracks, and then now you're on the light rail platform. And what Diane just said, that's what triggered in my mind, is I see something similar where if that was where we went, that depending on how these platforms were built, you would have to exit one, walk down a ramp or walk downstairs, probably a ramp, given ADA requirements, to come over to the other line in order to board that train.
But Chris, that is the other thing that's critical is the ADA.
Correct.
Those requirements are in place now. Everybody has to be accommodated. So
You have very narrow ramps.
nobody's forgetting about that.
Yeah, okay. It seems, okay. So, I mean, my questioning was more trying to understand, like, is it even economically, or even physically feasible at that location? But I would just say, there's a couple of things that come to my mind, and especially after all the conversations that I've had, just being on the board, in speaking with Adams County and Jefferson County representatives over the past year, there's definitely a preference for downtown. This is because of the east-west connectivity in particular, along 88th and the bus lines that we have that gives them a location. So if the downtown location is chosen, then we would have access the Front Range for Front Range Passenger Rail for Adams County, which wouldn't have it otherwise. So that's an important piece for them. And then Jefferson County as well, feeling like they have some access as well through this location. The other thing is that the Front Range Passenger Rail, it would be going on, at this point, the BNSF line, and that's an at-grade crossing right at 88th, which is just right next to, if you put that slide up of where we are, that location, this train would have to slow down anyway, right there for an at-grade crossing. And so when I think about, is it going to impact the service, the future service, and the FRA, are they going to be concerned about this particular location? They're already having to slow for the at-grade crossing. So I don't think it's as much of an impact. The other, just in terms of economic development here, when, for years, working to try and attract office users to this area, and the constant feedback that we received from them was, even though we would say we have so many buses, it's 12 minutes to downtown, the concept and the perception of fixed rail is just it's a huge hurdle for us to have to surpass if we don't have the fixed rail for this site. It just meant a lot to site selectors. So that this opportunity would also give a boost to, I think, the economic activity around the downtown. And finally, I think there's an opportunity for synergy with the Sheridan Park and Ride. To your point, Chris, regarding all of the first and last mile connections, I'm hoping that we would be able to utilize something to connect those two services, because it would give such a huge connectivity to that Front Range rail location. It's because it's the second busiest bus station in the region?
For Flatiron, for the Flatiron stops at Sheridan, I can't tell you that it's the second one, but I can tell you that Flatiron Flyers right now are running at capacity with a little extra. Now that federal employees have been called back into office based on policy, I've been told that there's standing room only up in Boulder and in Broomfield. I've not witnessed that here yet. All basically eastbound, not very much on the westbound side.
And the information that you've given me before, too, is this location at the Sheridan Park and Ride, downtown, is that there's sort of an even split
Pretty much
of
so.
directionality. So I think, in terms of, again, that east-west access, the amount of bus activity in that area, I just think it's a great location to be able to benefit the region. That's my Front Range Passenger Rail hat on, but also on the more economic side for it to benefit Westminster. Those are. I don't know if I really had any questions outside of the configuration. The only other thing, too, that does come to mind is the scalability of this downtown platform and location, because, we could start at the minimum for the platform length, but I know that Front Range Passenger Rail is looking for something longer, potentially over time, as it really kind of amps up the service. So there's, I think, to me, more room. I think we're a little more constrained in the Westminster Station area because we do have area just to the north of the platforms in Westminster Station for the B-line trains to sit and wait and then go back. So that's, and plus we have a lot, that platform is I just think it would be more expensive to actually be adding to that platform, particularly the ADA connections that we have there.
Councillor Ireland?
So how much will the station cost the city to build in downtown?
I'd let you guys jump in, but to my knowledge, this would be a state-built platform. It'll be a state-owned infrastructure, for the lack of a better term. I think from the city's perspective, if we wanted to augment the basic, because the state's probably going to do a basic, if we wanted to augment that with landscaping, art, any other types of those type of amenities that would come in, then that's what the benefit or the cost would be to the city. Unfortunately, we just don't know what that is yet.
And what about the parking? There's enough parking, because we built a whole $30 million garage at Westminster Station.
Sure. That's being.
I don't know that we have another $30 million to spend on another garage downtown.
Based on what the joint service team is doing right now is they're basing their information on what they've learned so far on Front Range Passenger Rail analysis, which is still in development, as we mentioned a moment ago, plus the RTD peak hour study that was concluded last year. I think October was when that was pulled in. And both of these so far are telling us that we're not really needing a parking deck, that we need parking, but not a parking deck. And as a reminder, we have parking across the street as part of downtown, that full lot that faces there on the corner of 88th and Harlan. Great question. We just don't have all those type of answers yet because we're still in that study phase of trying to figure out where and how all of that's going to work. I do not anticipate, based on RTD's feedback on the peak hour study last year, plus what we've learned so far with joint service, that we're looking at a parking deck here. But I'm not going to say never, never, because we don't know yet. We just don't have that ability to answer that question yet.
And I do like that we're not possibly have to raise sales tax, because that's already been a discussion for our city for fires. So sales tax could be crazy if we approve all of this. Anyway.
Councillor Carmelia?
Thank you. I just want to clarify, if we pursue this, does this change in any way, it sounds like probably not, but our pursuit of fast tracks, that would still be somewhere in the books for 2050?
I got to choose my words here. It's my interpretation, and I asked Diane to step in if I'm off base here. It's my interpretation this is going to be our B-line. The B-line as envisioned in 2004 as part of Fast Tracks likely will never be built as it was defined back in those, some 20 some odd years ago. The good thing about joint service is that, yes, it's a slightly different technology and it's negotiating with different partners, but it's expandable. And so, yes, we're going to start out with only a few trains each day round trip that are going to go up to Longmont and back. But over time, we can continue to add to those. Will we get to the 55 promised in fast tracks? You're putting me on the spot there. I'm not, I don't know if I'm qualified to answer that. But what I would say is that we have the opportunity to get Northwest Rail put into play.
Right.
Not where we want it, but at least something that we can start with, and then we can build upon that in the future.
Understood.
Now, how that's funded and all that can be another discussion for another day.
Okay. So essentially we're saying,
Thank you.
okay, so we're saying that this fulfills the promise for that station, essentially, even though it's not the same definition.
3 times a day does not a fulfillment make.
Right. Well, okay. So, okay, so this would replace it, though. I just want to add to the arguments already made by Mayor Pro Tem and yourself that the downtown area, it already has the connections needed. And I am also a little concerned about space, but I think overall that should be the least of our concerns, that if we get ridership up to the volume needed, then we really should be concentrating on where folks can park. I really appreciate the idea of connecting the RTD park and ride. If we have that problem, I think we should be figuring out how to resolve it. But the fact that we want to reduce parking requirements for some of the density housing being built down there, I think that this helps that argument in using the space a little bit more wisely in a somewhat confined area that we have downtown. And the focus should be and is making sure that we have the businesses that are built there succeed. And I think that this is a really direct way that we can guarantee as a city that we are focusing on that priority to make sure that those businesses down there succeed. So I really like that idea. I think I had a couple of questions, but they might have all been answered. Oh, I did want to thank you for concentrating on that stop at 36. I take that stop frequently. And so I myself usually see that one little bench there filled up. And so I'm really grateful that we're starting to look at how can we improve this space for others. That's a relief. And I know we've brought it up many times, but I love that this brings us to formally discussing that last mile of micromobility for all of our stops. So I know we're headed to getting to some real resolutions there soon. I can feel it. So it's good.
Anyone else? Councilor DeMott?
I just want to go ahead and say on the record, I don't think it's not a replacement what we paid for all these years. And if you want to look at why people don't want to fund transportation in the state of Colorado, at least in this area, you just went through it. And that drastically hurts our ability to convince taxpayers that they should fund any kind of transportation. I have concerns in general about, what this does, because our city is planned for many decades, whether it's the promenade, the TOD, or the downtown. Those things all were planned upon those promises made to the taxpayers when they voted for that. So I just don't want that to get lost in the conversation. This is a touchy situation up here. And this doesn't get us all what the people in Westminster think that they're going to get eventually. And so if you're telling me this is a replacement, it's not a great replacement. It would sure be nice to get something, but I have concerns. And I guess the other thing I would say is I've been sitting here for 7 years now, and the amount of different things that I've been told we may get that we went after, I don't want people to get too excited until I actually see a shovel in the ground, because quite frankly, this is probably the 10th different, thing that I've seen that we potentially could do. I'm glad that we continue to have the discussion and push forward, and it seems like we are having heartier conversations, but I just am measured and realistic in what I've been told over my time here.
Councilor Zadi?
Just wanted to thank you guys for coming out. I think this was a great presentation. It brought some clarity for me as to all the various moving pieces. Chris, you mentioned micromobility to Councilor Camelia's point. I think that's the exciting part for me. I'm looking forward to that discussion. I think we need to have a serious discussion as a council probably not in this 26 budget, but in 27, I think we need to be looking at the first and last mile across the city and what's missing and what's not. But thanks for the presentation. Something is better than nothing. So I'll take it. I like the downtown area concept. To Mayor Pro Tem's point, I think that's the right place to put it. And looking forward to seeing next steps.
I don't have anything new to add from what the other city councilors have said, but I do want to thank you for your presentation. I do think it helps provide some clarity. And I want to thank you for all your work on this. And I do agree that the downtown would be a better option.
I want to thank Diane for coming out and having lunch.
That was really fun.
I took her to the promenade area because how many hotels do we have out there? That is a stop that was original. We have a parking lot there, and the governor did his big announcement for the Chrissy grant there, and that has always been, that was originally, that and the Westminster station were the two original stops. Downtown was not, and it was accepted by the corridor much later into the process. So for me to say, because I do live by the promenade, I do think it has as much or more possibilities for the people to ride it than others, especially if Broomfield does not pick the Arista Center, then you would be picking up the south people from Broomfield being able to use that station. I can tell you there is next to no one on those buses because the two areas we used to park, that was my bus stop for 10 years when I worked downtown, and you could park there any time of the day. And each one of our stops, whether you are down at 71st and Hooker or if you're at the promenade, you have ways to walk. You have to plan because at least the buses come pretty regularly, but the one at the Westminster station, as we said, is every hour. And if it takes about 10 minutes from the time you park to get over to the ramps and station and get over there to do that. So I could argue all three why any one of them is good, because that's what I went out to the public and shared. And that's what we've built to. And in some ways, the promenade has more build out and things going there. As I told you the day we had lunch, that the Butterfly Pavilion staying, 300,000 people come, and kids could get on a train and come there ultimately in the day that we have the trains running and stuff. So all of that, I understand why staff wants it at the downtown. But I also understood we have that 30% built out with plans. True or false?
30% for
Build of that station done.
for the downtown station?
Yep.
I don't have the answer for that.
That was, while I was off those 8 years, I was told that was happening. So doesn't matter. I just am concerned because I see how the world is changing, and is downtown going to be what we first envisioned? I don't think so. It's going to be something else. And we do have 500 buses coming in to that station, and to tell me the promenade is okay with the Flatiron Flyer and they can do that. Okay, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. So you heard all of this at lunch, and I'm passionate about this. And am I concerned that we go through all of this, get people's stuff juiced up again, and nothing happens? You better believe it, because I have talked to enough RTD people that say it's never happening. And so I have also told you that I will never ask this council to sign something that doesn't have better checks and balances in it for what is going to happen, and not promises that aren't kept, because that's what happened to us on fast tracks. We had a quick switch and bait, and well, you've got the Flatiron Flyer. Well, wonderful. It's not rail. And when I was here before and we're starting the downtown, we had several Fortune 500s come and go and say, well, when's the rail coming? At that time, we said 2040. Well, now it's 2050. And they went down to Inglewood because rail's down there, and that was that. We're still in that. We can't promise them anything. And so we're still in the same situation. And something needs to be in this agreement that our community can hold somebody accountable, because if they're going to get one more penny squeezed out of them, they need to have some accountability. So you have Mayor Pro Tem Carmelia Hott and Azadi saying downtown.
I think we have everything we need.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you, council. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ready?
Yep.
Mayor Pro Tem City Council. Next up is Stephanie Ashman of our Planning Division. And Stephanie's going to present the city's landscape services program and HOA support initiatives. And this work has been developed and led by Stephanie. So Stephanie ought to be very proud of what she's presenting tonight, because this is some significant progress.
Thank you. So good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, councilors. Stephanie Ashman, Senior Planner with the city's Planning Division, focusing on landscape and conservation. So tonight I'm here before you to give this presentation for you to receive it, and you should have also reviewed a staff agenda memo as well. We're going to be going over the landscape assistance services, programs, and HOA support initiatives and planned future work. So we're all very familiar with the green grass and watering that we do here in Westminster. I want to give some background as to how we got here. So Westminster has a long history of supporting water conservation efforts. We've been doing it for about 45 years. Nearly half of the city's treated drinking water is used for outdoor irrigation purposes, is what we've noticed. And that's pretty consistent, I'd say, from what I've heard throughout the Denver metro area. Most of our residential growth happened between the 1970s and 1990s, and our median home built is in 1987. So during that time frame, a lot of the landscape approach was common to use Kentucky bluegrass as a material throughout our HOA communities. And so that's why you see a lot of that in what we call common areas in our communities. Out of all the land area that the comp plan has designated as residential, 86% of those are managed by HOAs. So you get a general idea of how those areas are maintained throughout our city. So part of our continued efforts in water conservation, in 2002, Colorado experienced a pretty severe drought. And as a result, in 2004, Westminster created our 2004 landscape regulations. And within those, they were pretty forward for their time. They had a lot of water-wise landscaping and irrigation practices. We did hydrozoning, which was fairly new for communities to do in Colorado, and that's looking at plant material, there's water needs, and how you irrigate those areas. But with these practices put in, a majority of our city was built out, right? That median home built in the 80s. So a lot of the communities didn't really get to use those best practices that were established in those 2004 regulations. So to continue our water conservation efforts, the City Council adopted the Water Conservation Efficiency Plan of 2020. And that was a response to the rising water rates that we had in the city. And there's also increased maintenance costs with landscapes, Kentucky bluegrass landscapes. And so what that plan also aimed to do was to reduce and improve the efficiency of indoor and outdoor water use. So as a response, our Public Works and Utilities Department created a turf replacement program for single unit homes. So a lot of you might know Resource Central and Garden in the Box, also the lawn replacement program for single family homes. And then also the irrigation audits for HOAs and businesses. So as part of those audits, recommendations come out of those audits. Some of them are irrigation fixes, which you could save up to 25% on water costs and efficiencies with just irrigation fixes alone. But also looking at official development plans and saying, hey, you can replace some of this Kentucky bluegrass that your community might not be using, which is what's been defined at the state level as non-functional. So that's kind of where my role comes in, right? So I'm here to support these efforts with combined feedback of listening to City Council, your constituents, of needing help, HOAs needing help in converting Kentucky bluegrass lawns and reducing the amount of water that they're using. And my role, by working with the city for the last 13 years in development review, I also have a master's in landscape architecture. So I'm able to use my experience in managing official development plan amendments, my educational experience in landscape architecture to really help communities go through this process. And I can provide a really consistent message to developers, to residents, when it comes to Westminster's policies and regulations on landscape in the city. And so up here are some examples of the services that I'll provide. So technical, these are 3 official development plan amendments that I did last year for 3 different HOAs. Then I provide educational consultations to HOAs about turf conversion projects. And those are funneled to me through the irrigation audit list of HOAs that we've been working with for the last 4 years. So I have a list of committed individuals, people that are on their boards, they're champions, and I get to work with them. And it's really awesome because they are really committed to their communities. And so they come to me and I provide them with that education. Where do we want to do a turf conversion in your community that could be very successful? And then I also work with external resources like Resource Central to help matchmake, to say, okay, can we get more grant funding, more resources that the city doesn't necessarily have to contribute to help these projects become successful? And I'm not reinventing the wheel here on some of this stuff because they have maintenance plans and project planning matrices, and so it's a really good way to use the resources that the state has been working on in these various nonprofits to promote turf conversion in Westminster. So that brings me to the turf conversion program that we started last year. So it's more of a pilot, right? Because we were just learning what we were going to do. And I had 4 participants, HOAs. So the Home Farm neighborhood, Lexington neighborhood, Ranch Reserve neighborhood, and Madison Hills. And the city ended up providing $22,500 in financial assistance. That was a partnership with Public Works and Utilities. Our conservation specialist over there had some grant funds that he was able to contribute to help get that project up and running. $24,500 in external funds, which is pretty awesome, through Resource Central and helping partner with their pilot program that they had last year. We got 1.6 acres of turf removed, which is pretty decent. And we're kicking off the program this year. We started getting the message out to the last list of irrigation audit participants and the 4 years prior, just still keeping connections with people. And we have a couple interested HOAs. One of them is Cottonwood Villas, which I know that has been a topic of conversation a lot lately through council. So very excited about that partnership. So I wanted to go through some case studies so you can see what some of this looks like. Now keep in mind, this just went in last year, so the growth season, you have to at least get 2 growth seasons in order for it to really come in and look really nice. But this is the Home Farm neighborhood. The area that you see in the red is the area they converted. And that ended up being 16,000 square feet of Kentucky bluegrass that was removed. You can see they have a lot there, but that was the chunk that they focused on. They did a combination of water-wise perennials, pollinator species, shrubs, and native grasses. The city provided $10,000 in rebates. We waived the $75 review fee for the application. And before the conversion, they were using 240,000 gallons of water a year. You think about that, that's just during the seasons that your irrigation's on. So that's pretty intensive watering. And these are estimations, by the way, based on how that plant material is watered and how much water it uses annually. And then after the conversion is established, that's about 80,000 gallons a year after the conversion once established that they're using. So that's a 35% water savings. So, and the reason why it's a 35%, it's not all native grass that they did, which is the best bang for your buck when you're doing conversion. They incorporated the perennials and the shrubs, which can increase your cost per square footage. So next, we'll go to Lexington. So Lexington did about a 1 acre conversion, which this is the best bang for your buck when it comes to the city contributing funds and offsetting the costs for HOAs. So the before is on the left and the after is on the right. Mind you, this is establishing grass, so they're watering it. They had to get it established. The west lawn is what they did, so that's the area in the red. It was all Kentucky bluegrass, and they went to buffalo grass and blue grama. So as you can see, it's a very beautiful looking lawn. It greens up a little bit later in the season because it's considered warm season grass. So it's not going to be green right away, but it greens once it starts getting warm. We contributed $10,000 in rebates. We helped them with about $1,000 in soft costs by creating those ODP amendment documents that I showed you a couple slides prior. Also waived the $75 review fee as being part of the program. I worked with their landscape chair, committee chair, walked them through submitting the ODP and reviewed it myself. So I made the document, I reviewed it, it was pretty easy, right? And they really appreciated that. And so before the conversion, they were using 653,000 gallons a year. It's just in that watering season. And after establishment, 453,600 gallons. But that's a 70% water savings that they're getting just out of that 1 acre. Now the Ranch Reserve neighborhood, this was one where they took out, so you could see in the red area, this like a little red square. It's kind of right off the parkway. It's a nice viewpoint into that corridor that they have. It's a natural corridor. The before, it's Kentucky bluegrass that they were struggling to keep alive and water. And then underneath is the after, but I'm on the other side of the sidewalk. And what they did is they converted the Kentucky bluegrass into a perennial and shrub garden. So no native grass here. So we didn't contribute any city funds for this one because it wasn't native grass. And I was trying to study native grass turf conversions. So I partnered them with Resource Central, which got them $20,000. So that was really beneficial for them. They were still able to do their conversion and be able to save money on water and maintenance. I did save them $1,000 in soft costs and the $75 review fee by doing their documentation for them. They used 54,000 gallons a year before the conversion and 18,000 after, so it's a 33% water saving. So we got great HOA participation feedback, very, very elated with the ODP process, very happy that the city was able to provide funds, want to do it next year, very excited, very positive. Another program that we're doing is our public right-of-way water-wise landscape program. And we contracted with a landscape design firm to help us create 6 water-wise templates to help HOAs and even people not in HOAs, I think this could work for as well, convert their planting strip, which is the back of curb to the front of the sidewalk. Some people call it tree lawns. Rip out that turf grass, protect the trees, and put in water-wise pollinator protective plants. With the 6 different templates, you have 6 that are for sun condition and 6 that are for shade condition. So they can be used throughout an entire HOA community in any condition. We have these really nice graphics here that I think help sell it to the community that doesn't have the trained landscape eye, but can see this and say, oh, I really like this texture and pattern that this template is providing. It helps provide the consistency through the HOA communities, which I know we're used to seeing, and we want to continue to see a nice approach to landscape in our city. And then also, there's a whole technical documentation process. So you can give a technical sheet to your installer, and they will make sure that it's planted, the total number of plants that you need, where they're going to go to stay away from fire hydrants, to water the trees. And then there's what we want to set up for it, because we just got these finished, is an inspection process to make sure that, hey, your contractor did it right? We want to make sure that if you are paying to get it put in, and if we might be providing some financial assistance, that it's done right in your community. And there's also a single page ODP amendment for it that we have created. Check off the boxes, sign it, done. So the templates are just run and go with it. So it's a nice, smooth, streamlined ODP process. So for the work ahead, I want to continue to formalize and button up the program from lessons learned, things like that. Oh, it looks like it's stuck. I want to grow the education and communication resources to increase participation in the program. For example, starting like a year ahead in advance of contacting HOAs, because a lot of it's budgeting, and they need to speak with their communities about what it looks like, because it is kind of different for our community to see native grass instead of Kentucky bluegrass. And then continue the collaboration with internal work groups for a seamless external presence to our residences. So, they can come, say they want to do a conservation program, and then it's really easy internally for us to know who's running the program and where those funds are coming from. And also, I want to help support any approved plan that council has done, the sustainability plan, the water conservation efficiency plan, the urban forestry management plan. There's all these things that I think this program can really help. Helping pollinators species within our community and decreasing carbon footprint associated with the maintenance costs of mowing. So really excited about it, and I'm very happy for you to be able to listen to me give you this presentation this evening, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Councilor Dumont?
I don't have any questions. I just want to thank staff for all this work. I know that this conversation actually probably goes back before 2020. And one of the big things through a lot of the tension of the water discussion and all that we've went through as a community for the last decade, there was always a strong feeling of a lot of this stuff was things that we as a city had prescribed to folks, whether it was in HOAs or non-HOAs. I've had developers talk to me before about areas where, they were forced to put Kentucky bluegrass in and have to water it. So I know this has been a lot of work and a lot of years, but to see it actually starting to come to fruition and see some real water savings in a way that we're partnering with these communities is very meaningful to me, being that I've been part of that conversation for about 7.5 years now. So I just wanted to not let that go unsaid, that I super appreciate the work here, and I'm very excited to see what you've done with it.
Yeah, Stephanie Ashman. It's pretty awesome what you've been able to accomplish, and I'm just really excited, not only for what Councilor DeMott was saying regarding just what we used to require and what we're now doing to help address the issues that created. I just really love, too, that we've been able to transition a planning position into something that is having a huge impact. It's more of an implementation position for the community. We're not building as much, but man, this is making a huge impact on our physical environment and utilizing your talents. And so I'm just really excited to see this continue to grow. I love where you're going ahead with this. I'm definitely curious to, just had just two questions. One about the right-of-way component. Is that, because I'm just thinking with the HOAs don't usually make those the right-of-way improvements. Would that be just like individual property owners? But the HOA would sort of say, hey, we did this ODP amendment, you guys can do this when you want, or?
Yeah, I think it could go multiple ways. So in some instances, in official development plans, the HOA maintains the tree lawn or the planting strip. And so the HOA could come in, do the ODP amendment, and then make those improvements across like one seamless strip. There are some communities, little strips in Bradburn, right? Bradburn Village, like a row of townhomes that has just their tree lawn that they've wanted to take care of. That'd be an instance for example like that. In other instances where the homeowner maintains the planting strip, it would be an ODP amendment by the HOA and then would say, okay, homeowner, you want to use, or we're approving you to use this template because it's on this sunny side of the street and we really liked this palette that was created to put in your tree lawn. So there's a couple ways. And then I also feel like for non-HOA communities, I mean, these are going to be on our web page. So if you wanted to take that planting strip design and put it on your area of right-of-way in the part of the city that you want to make it look nicer and decrease watering, you could do that. Or you could take it and just put it in your front lawn too. You know, if you can expand it how you want to. So it's just a good resource for everyone that wants to make a turf conversion project happen.
And is this something that an HOA could apply to medians as well?
I mean, I think they probably could. It would apply, you know, if the full sunny, it depends on the condition. Okay. You know, I like to be able to, like, I want to be able to provide consultation services. So if an HOA wants to do this, I'm readily available for them to talk to me. I can go out to their sites, look at it with them, and then make recommendations. That's kind of my plan.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And I think, Jody, I asked this a while ago. The Google Fiber and all these other fiber groups, are they at all coming in and placing their fiber in the right-of-way in the planting strips, or are they in the road? Anybody know?
I think it's a mix depending on the company, but they're all doing a version of micro tunneling or micro trenching, so not disturbing the surface except where they're going, except to the place where they're actually launching their fiber tunneling.
Okay.
Along 112th, they do it in the right-of-way.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess the last question I have is just, in order to keep this program going, and it seems like a lot of the HOAs that utilize this pilot needed some type of financial assistance. Is this something that we would need to budget in? Are we looking for grant opportunities? What's the...
Yes, yeah. I mean, we're definitely interested in exploring those options with council.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. We have funds that are allocated this year.
For 2025?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And that was in last year's budget? I don't remember that one, but okay. Too much of a detail, I guess. Yeah. Okay.
I mean, I think we've also gotten creative with funding in the department to prioritize it towards here, just like we did with Stephanie's position. We repurposed an existing position for this purpose, and we've been able to do that with funding this year, and then we'll get a better sense. We wanted to try these pilots, particularly with those 3 HOAs, and test it out, and then try some new things as well. So that
then partnering with utilities.
Partnering with utilities, and then also our work with the external firm, which brings funding to the table. So we wanted to have all of that before we came to council if we came to council with any request.
I hate to jump the line, but just on this point, though, I mean, back to my earlier points, we've been doing this for a while, and part of that council's done at least since 2020, where we've been actively putting money out of those same sources, haven't we? I mean, and we've kind of increased it through the years where as you've developed these programs and they've been successful, we've added to it. Is that accurate?
I think that's accurate, and we can get the numbers. We can go back. I think Lindsay may have.
If I could, great question. As Stephanie said, this started with Public Works with their programs. Stephanie's program specifically allocated to turf conversion and large formats that we could assist with, and tree lawns. That started last year with her pilot program, and this is the first year we're ramping and growing from that pilot program. So we did reallocate funds within the department, made a decision to take funds because we really believe in this program from community services perspective. Even though we didn't get an allocation in the CIP for this last year,
Okay.
we reallocated internally to make it happen because it in my perspective, it was just so helpful to the community and so popular. So I recommended reallocation of funds to fund this, but in 2026, we'd love to have an allocation.
I would, and to answer both next week, we do have 2 memos that will contain information, I think, that speak to what Councillor DeMott raised in particular, which is the Water Bill Assistance Program and the Water Conservation and Efficiency Program. Both of those will have updates, and those are areas that City Council has continued to support and increase as well. And what you heard from Stephanie is a bridging between our programs with our utility and our community services group under Lindsay's leadership.
Next step.
Yeah, I'd love to see this also applicable to residents, over time. But I mean, this is a huge issue for residents all across the board. I know we have a lot of communities in HOAs, but this type of assistance to help people, figure out how to get these conversions happening. I think it's a huge barrier for folks, just like individually. So anyway, I'd love to. I definitely support this. I think we've heard a lot from our community members about this. So thank you.
Councillor Ireland?
So Stephanie, I've had great feedback from HOAs about you and your expertise. How many HOAs have applied for this grant?
For this year?
Yeah.
I have 1 signed commitment form from Cottonwood Villas. And I have 2 other HOAs that I am working with, kind of reviewing some of their documentation, their program planning and maintenance documents. So I'm hoping to have 3 this year. I feel having the participants come through the audit is a really good way to know that I have a champion on the board to really bring a project from, beginning to end. I am still thinking of other ways of doing outreach, because I know that not everyone participates in the irrigation audit. But it does kind of help when I have a HOA reach out to me and then I say, well, maybe you want to do the audit first, because really that is actually the really best first step to take. And I was also speaking with PWU about saying, okay, once you get a commitment from an audit this year, let's get them in the pipeline for this year if we can, if it's soon enough in the season, because there's a small window for planting native grass for it to be successful.
And about the public right-of-way, do you put some kind of weed block in there? Because it seems like it'd be more work to take care of than just mowing if there's tons of weeds.
There's a couple of methods, forms of thought on weed barrier. With native perennials and shrubs, they tend to grow and spread. They'll drop seed and spread and cover an entire area and essentially fight out the weeds over time. And so if you put a good amount of rock mulch down as a thick barrier without the weed fabric, you can still have healthy soils. And then that really does encourage your native plants to spread and become really thick and full so that weeds have a harder time competing for that same space.
Okay, we have a lot of HOAs, and I'm surprised there's only 3 of them that reached out.
Yeah, well, it's good. It's, baby program. We're getting it going.
Councillor Carmelia?
I'll say thank you. I think this is a program that everyone here can be excited about. I mean, we're all excited about reducing water usage, and this is exciting to see native species being planted, and the fact that you are helping and finding creative ways for HOAs to fund this, I think helps make this progress faster. So major thank you there. I'm wondering, this is a little off the topic of what we're discussing, but seeing as we're helping the HOAs find more creative ways to reduce their water, are we also finding ways to subsidize electric leaf blowers and lawnmowers in any way? I feel like that could easily be a side, branch, or is that a different department?
Well, it's same department, different division. Our sustainability office in the community services, Bridger, is our sustainability officer and doing a fantastic job. He has actually had, through grant money received from the state, drawings and giveaways for those electric lawn tools, lawnmowers, and things. We generally do those as a, drop your name in the bucket, and we're at Westy Fest, or we're doing some community outreach event, and then that gives us a pipeline of people who are interested and builds our list, but also it provides an opportunity for us to have those drawings for electric mowers and blowers and things like that. And I know that Bridger is also working on a more robust grant program, particularly for lower income, moderate income residents, to be able to swap out their gas powered for those. So more to come.
Right. And that I did know about, so thank you, love that. I wish we could find a way for our HOAs, because then we could expand it to a much larger scale around the city, because I know in my HOA alone, there's like 12 folks out there all at once with leaf blowers, right? And that consumes, I forget the number, but I think like 6 cars at once. It's nuts. But anyway, it's like it's a very high number. I was wondering, I saw that you included Madison Hill, but we didn't get the map for that one. Did that one finish, or is that happening this coming year?
So they did plant last year. They got Resource Central funds of $2,500, and I didn't include them because it technically wasn't native grass, but I did help them with their ODP amendment. So it was kind of, I only had 10 slides, so I would have shown them. But yeah, they did plant it last year, and it did come in. So they are reducing their water costs, but it's not as great as maybe a native grass would be.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, understood. I live in Madison Hill, and so I was just curious how they were.
There's a lot of turf grass in it.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess. Oh, and then my last question. I'm trying to read my own writing. You said you're doing consultations with the HOAs, which is wonderful. I'm just wondering if we can expand those consultations to our developers when we come through the planning process. I know that our developers have been really good about coming to us with a lot of water conservation ideas. I just don't know that they have been doing a lot of native grass planting or native species and pollinator species planting. And so I'm wondering if we can expand that offering to them.
Yeah, so with the development community, we're going to be updating our landscape regulations to make that a requirement, push it more so than we have in the past. And also, there's been some state regulations from last year that have defined functional and non-functional turf, and that you can't use non-functional turf within areas that aren't actively used, right? Where you would have functional turf, like a playing field or a park. So they are very much aware of that. And so, we won't be seeing the type of high hydrozone or high water using Kentucky bluegrass in those planting strip areas or non-functional areas as we have in the past. What you might see is a hybridized sod that has been acclimated to Colorado's climate. So you might think that you're seeing sod put in like Kentucky bluegrass sod, using a lot of water into those right-of-ways, but really it's a moderate water hybridized sod for Colorado's climate. So just so that you know, it's not, sometimes you'll see it and you'll think, oh, it's there. It's a different breed.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
And so going forward this year, we can expect that, or that's already happening? Or
yeah, so there's a lot of, in the landscape plans within Uplands community, they're using that type of sod, so you'll see it there first.
Amazing.
Probably.
Okay, excellent. And I just learned a new fact from your presentation, which apparently I'm as old as the average house here, so good to know. I'm going to use that line now. So thank you.
So, Council, if I could add something too, and I know Stephanie's been really focused on these programs in the presentation tonight, but she still does all of our development review for landscaping.
Understood. Okay.
So she reviews every commercial landscape plan, every residential landscaping plan, and she's there at the pre-application meetings providing all of this upfront advice.
Fantastic.
So the developers are really getting a first look at what their obligations would be and what their help resources would be.
That's really good to understand. Thank you so much for adding that. I'm glad that they all go through you.
Counselor Hutt, anything?
I just want to thank you for your presentation. I'm super excited. Like this, I agree with a lot of what the other counselors have said. I'm just super excited, and I'm excited to see that this continue and expand. So yeah, thank you so much.
Counselor Zadi?
Yes, thank you so much. I want to reiterate or reemphasize, this is a one-woman team. I know you worked with a lot of internal groups. This is a really impressive work that you've done. I was excited to see this in the PRL board when you first presented it to us. Now to see the results, it's incredible. And I agree with everything everyone else has said. And on top of that, the landscape templates, I think the design and the experience or the potential experience of that would be really good for residents. Did you make those yourself?
We contracted with a landscape architecture firm.
And they're all made out, they're all done?
Yeah.
Each? I think we should push that out and figure out how to really apply that and just give people options, because a lot of residents ask, well, you know, I want to convert, but I have no idea what's available, what to do. I think just having the visual of, well, here's what it could look like here, and maybe not just for that set of templates, but for everything in terms of what we are talking about with water conservation.
Yeah.
We need more visuals that really help people connect the dots and say, this is what's available. So I think that's one opportunity. The budget request was asked. That was my first question. I'm hoping to see a budget request if you need it. I would be in support of that. I think HOAs, a lot of reps from HOAs reach out to me a lot, and their main questions are either crime related or water. Oh, we have this big turf. What can the city do? Can help me out? There's a lot of need there. So I'm guessing with more promo in some way, maybe working with the communications team, if people know more about it, I think they would, all the HOAs would jump on this. I think they all need it. And like you said, most of the open common areas are owned by HOAs. Yeah. So that's a huge opportunity there. And the neighborhood grant program that also goes through the PRL board, there's synergies here, right? With, in terms of a neighborhood project that an HOA neighborhood may want to do, and this. So maybe in the future, there's a synergy there. I'm not sure what that would be in the most efficient way, but I'm sure there's ways of connecting those two and figuring out. But thank you for doing this. It's really great work.
Thank you.
Thank you, and I agree with Obi. I think videos, they could be short and sweet. You've got the template, but use the common names for the plants so they know they can go to O'Toole's or wherever and get these plants.
Yeah.
And the sunny and the shady, or maybe they need a little bit of both. I just think people then would have an idea of what they could do. And anytime we can give those short videos so they can stop it and write down or do whatever they need to do so that they can their areas into this kind of thing is great. And then as you drive around, or any of us could probably tell you, there's a few places that I swear are at 180-degree angles and we have grass on them. Do you ever stop and talk to those HOAs and say, I'm here to help? If you don't, because number one, they always look bad by the middle of summer. I'm worried about, I've watched some people try to mow those, and I know Arvada did have an accident, and I think somebody lost a leg or something with those mowers because they're at such an angle. Why? I just, why?
I have had HOAs reach out to me about those spaces. They can be kind of difficult because, you know, Kentucky bluegrass needs a lot of water, but it is kind of hardy in the sense that it can take salts. And being by the road, they can take a lot of salt, and being sod, they can establish a slope fairly quickly. So I'm always wondering, you know, what can go there? And native grass has a little bit of a harder time thriving in one of those zones. There are some salt-tolerant grasses to explore. And, you know, putting rock isn't necessarily what we want to see all over our community. So it's definitely a challenge area that
Could you have
these
the bottom
templates
part
that-
be
Yeah.
the Kentucky and the upper part be the other? I think of the promenade at the ice rink. I mean, I've watched those people mow.
Oh, yeah. Mhm. For those type of slopes, because the promenade slope on both sides is fairly steep, and the likelihood of ice, salt hitting those areas is a lot less, that could be more successful in that location. Some of those smaller, very steep, still trying to figure that out because it's a difficult space.
Yeah. Thank you. I can remember back when I was here the first time that it made no sense to me why we made people do crazy things. So I'm grateful you're here to undo those crazy things.
Well, thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Stephanie. Thanks, John.
Next up, council discussion on directing staff to draft an ordinance to ban the sale of live animals. Councilor Hott, do you want to?
Sure. This was brought to us by constituents. They came and spoke last week. I think they made a lot of good points. We got an email from Chris Klein that detailed very well what animals go through. And so it's really exploitation of life for profit. And the amount of neglect, the amount of disease, and it's really unfair to our consumers as well. When they're excited to bring home a new family member and that animal turns out to be sick and they have no recourse. I know that happened to me with a bird. I got a bird actually in Westminster from a pet shop, and we spent several $100s, and the bird died. It was like 30 days that I could contact the pet store, right? And the bird died at 34 days after getting the bird. And we spent quite a bit of money trying to save him, and it ultimately he didn't make it. But I know this has happened to other people with dogs and cats, and I know we're not currently selling dogs and cats in Westminster, but other municipalities are bringing these ordinances forward. And last week, one of the residents was even talking about Denver is exploring this. And so the more municipalities that have these ordinances, that opens up Westminster for these pet shops to want to move in if we don't have one of those ordinances. So I think even though we're not currently having that issue, I think it's still important for preventative since other municipalities are passing these ordinances.
While I think, like you said, I don't think it's an imminent need at the moment in terms of are there sales occurring here. I'm still open to having staff create an ordinance. I think it's a good preventative measure. Hopefully it's not a huge amount of time to put something like this together. I know this came from both constituents in the city as well as out of the city. Definitely was encouraging them to pursue this at the state level as well, because I know they mentioned a lot of states actually have this in place. Not Colorado, obviously.
It's gone through several times at the state level.
Tried.
I think that's why a lot of the municipalities are passing these ordinances, because they've tried to pass it multiple times at the state level unsuccessfully.
That is good additional perspective. So yeah, I'm open to it. So others?
Councilor Erlin.
I'm open to the dog and cats because I do think they come from puppy and cat mills, but the rest of the live animals, as far as fish and amphibians and rattlesnake, not some rattlesnakes, but snakes and guinea pigs and all that, they're going to be in a cage whether they're in someone's house or they're in the pet store. They're still in a cage. Birds are in a cage. They're all in a cage, no
My
matter where they
birds are
come
not
from.
in their cage the majority of the day.
Well, I think a lot of people's birds are in cages. Hate to say it. So I am for the dogs and cats, and I do like that our pet stores have them for adopting from shelters. But the rest of them, I don't see the common sense in it.
Councilor Demott?
First, thank you for bringing it forward for us to have a conversation about. I am okay with the dogs and cats. I don't think that we have a problem today, and my understanding is we have other ways to control that. But if you feel that that would help that effort, I would be willing to support that. I am hesitant with other ones. There are businesses that you would impact and potentially put out of business in the city. I don't know all the practices around smaller animals, and I'm not going to say that they're all, you know, every pet store is ethical. However, you would also be, you know, I don't know what the line is that you're even asking, to be frank, because I think about Murdoch's, and it wasn't that long ago that council right before I got on made it so that you could have chickens. And you think about what people are actually doing with that today with the price of eggs. You know, there is a component of people being able to live a certain freer life and a healthier life in some cases because we have that as an ordinance. So for us to say, okay, now you're allowed to do it, but Murdoch's, you're no longer allowed to sell. You know, there is a line for me with that. So, you know, if the majority of council put something forward that was dogs and cats, only adoption, I'm on board with that. All my 3 animals are all rescues, so I don't have a problem with that. And you know, I think that people should do rescues versus, you know, the puppy mill route. So that's where I'm at.
Thank you to Councilor Demott. He addressed the majority of what I was going to say. Because what I've been conflicted of is defining exactly what it is that we're going to be banning, if anything. And so while, again, I'll reiterate, it doesn't seem like we have this problem, I am concerned that if cities around the state are banning this, there might be more of a demand in the future. And if I have the ability to prevent something that is inhumane, I don't see why I shouldn't take that action right now to do that. So I would be in favor of banning the sale of cats and dogs. I think that that's probably the largest share of this industry to begin with. But I have been trying to understand where I come from if we're talking about birds and reptiles. And I don't know if we have stores within Westminster. I know I've seen stores in Arvada and Lakewood and other places that do specifically sell those. And I don't know that I know enough right now to take a stance on that either way. And so I think sometimes with these things, we have to start somewhere. And maybe this is where we say that we agree to start, is to say, okay, retailers cannot sell these 2 animals, and they are the largest demand of the market anyway. And then we know that we're doing some good in this area. And then if anything comes in the future, we can build on this then at that time.
If I can address a couple things. So birds and reptiles are often imported from other areas. So like cockatiels, they come from Australia. So a lot of times they are illegally imported in really bad conditions. And that's how we end up with birds and reptiles in our pet shops. So there's huge concern. And I hear the concern with that Councilor Demott brought up, and I think that's a very good point. Maybe if we just said parrots, because then chickens would, but parrots is really the issue. They get imported from other areas, and people really don't understand the care. And a lot of them, even once they're sold, they don't get taken care of very well because people don't understand how demanding those exotic birds are. And so I would hope that maybe we could include parrots so that way we can still be selling chickens. I don't know if Murdoch's would apply because it's technically not a pet store, but I know that there's a huge issue with birds and reptiles. And so I definitely wouldn't want to make it to where anyone couldn't have chickens, because that's definitely something I had talked to council about, you know, before we could have chickens and bees. That was something that I definitely wanted to have. So I definitely want to impact that. But importing and then being at the pet store, and then a lot of times when they go home, if we could do something for parrots, I would appreciate it. But I also understand if you're just for cats and dogs, I would take anything over nothing.
In reading everything that people brought to us, the information was from 2005 to 2019. So as I did my research, the things that have been put into place tell me it's the things we have in place today is working. We're talking about targeting mills, and so that's one issue. But in going and talking to the PetSmart management, I know their headquarters has policy. That's the reason they don't sell cats and dogs. They have a policy, and they know there's plenty of animals out there. That's the reason they do hook up with shelters, and they try to hook up with shelters that you don't have to pay anything, so that they're even free. But they just even have a good process in that for how they have people sign up so that they try to get the best fits possible. Also, because I know we had a handful of people come to the dais, I was curious because we haven't had this out into the public. So I put something out on Facebook. I had 45 responses the last time I looked, and only 3 were for the banning, and the rest had very thoughtful. Nobody was nasty or anything. Everybody had thoughtful pieces. We do have a pet shop license, and for a Class B pet shop, they have to have $500 a license fee each year, and $10,000 bond is required. And that's if we have exotic animals. And I know we do have an exotic fish store down at 72nd, and I know PetSmart said when people come in looking for a certain something or other, and I know nothing about fish, but he said we just send them down to 72nd. PACFA was started, and that is a mandatory reporting of animal cruelty, license, regulate, and investigate animal facilities in Colorado. And part of our license is that PACFA comes in. They go into any place that has any animals. So they go into Murdoch's, they go into PetSmart, they go into whatever. I can think of the last time, probably around 2019, we had something up at 100 and maybe 21st and Melody area. It was something that lasted less than 6 months, and I think it's because we do have regulations in place. And they include, what they look for is they regulate animals such as dogs, cats, birds, small mammals, reptiles, amphibians, and herptiles, including animal shelters, animal rescue organizations, pet animal boarding and training, pet animal breeders, pet animal groomers and grooming facilities, retail and wholesale dealerships, retail aquariums, pet handlers, pet transporters, and commercial facilities using pet and animal for recreation, sport, and exhibition. They also, with all of the rules, not only do they get this once a year, but our animal management has to go in once a year, and they can go in at any time. And if they find things that are concerning, they report it to PACFA, and they will not get a renewed license. Another thing that is out there is the horrible 100 from 2025, the problem with puppy mills. Colorado is not in that list. They share from around the country. The top ones: Illinois has 3, Iowa 12, Kansas 4, Minnesota 1, Missouri 26, Nebraska 2, New York 11, Ohio 16, Oklahoma 3, Pennsylvania 11, and Texas 7, and Wisconsin 4. Again, that's the top 100 horrible puppy mills or mills for animals. So looking at everything, to me, and knowing when shops have come and gone, I think things in place through, and everything's through the Department of Agriculture. And I just think the checks and balances work.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Sure.
Amber, are you asking, which animals are you asking?
My preference would be dogs and cats, and because they come from out-of-state puppy mills. So I understand we don't have any here in Colorado, but they get brought over from the states that do have them. So dogs and cats, parrots, and I think that rabbits would be another good addition.
So I'm a yes on those 4.
So what are you, Mayor Pro Tem?
I know the most about the dogs and cats. I did hear rabbits was something of that was brought up too. And I mean, I feel like I don't have the greatest grasp of the need for this. So at minimum, dogs and cats, and others are supportive of more. I can get behind that.
That's right.
I have to say that some people raise rabbits for food too, not just chickens.
Councilor DeMont?
I just want to get back to one of my points that I made in clarifying. I think it would, A, be a lot of work, but B, I don't think that we know enough to do more than the dogs and cats. Super comfortable with that. However, to the mayor's point, and I did say this briefly, I think we have things in place that stop it. I want to at least put out that we have a lot of things that staff is working on, and this is going to take staff time. So, I just want to be mindful of that. But if we're going to do something, I wanted to make sure that you all understood I would be supportive of dogs and cats. However, I do think that we have sufficient regulation that I'd be comfortable as not doing it. But if we were going to do it, I would prefer that we stick to those animals.
I'm okay with dogs and cats
for the get-go.
If you're going to go dogs and cats, then I have 4 people.
You okay with that, Amber?
Yeah, that's better than nothing, so absolutely.
Thank you, Councilor Hall.
Thank you. And also, we do have other cities in Colorado that have done ordinances, and so maybe it could save some staff time by looking at one of them and whatever fits what we've done instead of having to rewrite a whole new one. Maybe that will help save on some staff time.
And we have at least one close by that did it, and now they have animals being sold in flea markets and every place but a store that is regulated. And they're sorry that they did it.
Well, we need to make sure that doesn't happen here.
So, good. Mr. Frankel, would you like to share?
So yes, I think understanding the scope is very helpful to inform the drafting process. So if the desired scope for now is to start with dogs and cats, clearly we want to facilitate adoptions of dogs and cats. We don't want to ban adoptions.
Absolutely.
So we will look to the code and see how best to draft that language. I have been in touch with Fort Collins, and my understanding is they've done dogs and cats specific, which won't go into effect until May 20th. So I don't know, operationally, what issues they've identified once it's gone into effect, because it hasn't happened yet. But I do have the draft and have a point of contact in their city attorney's office that can support our drafting efforts. And so what I'd like to do then is start drafting. And as we make progress, if it's necessary to come back at a study session, perhaps we could have a conversation about the draft and whether or not the draft meets the goals of council. Mm-hmm. I just asked for that study session step. If putting it on for first reading, if there's more conversation needed before that, I don't want to jump the gun and set it for first reading.
I would always prefer it here first. I don't want to vote on it first time I see it.
It's only retail stores, right?
Pet shops.
Yeah. It wouldn't. Breeders, it would not affect at all. But with breeders, there's not the same issues with breeders as there are. They tend to take a lot more care of their animals.
We have ordinances around our breeders, and they can have 2 litters a year.
If I may make a suggestion, I think that we're looking for retailers. I don't know if we want to say pet shops specifically, because sometimes other areas can also I'm just going to advocate for retailers.
I think that's smart.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anything else?
That helps, I think. That will inform our drafting.
Does anybody need a break before we get into the next one, or you ready to go? Okay. You want a break?
Yeah.
Okay, 5 minutes.
And now,
Okay. Woman Creek.
Yes, thank you for indulging me in having this on the agenda tonight. This was initiated as a topic tonight by me, and it was to work together to remove any confusion around what is happening or may be happening on the Woman Creek Authority parcel. And this is specifically to do with the crossings agreement that City Council directed that we withdraw from, which we did. And further to that, Council directed that we not block access to the crossings bridge that was going across Indiana, not landing on our property, but landing very close to our property. As part of that discussion in March, the direction was twofold that night. The first was to authorize the mayor to execute the Woman Creek Reservoir Authority property agreement with Jefferson County in substantially the form attached. So that was reviewed and that motion went forward. So the mayor did execute that agreement with Jefferson County. And then the second item that night that staff received direction on was direct staff to work with Jefferson County to pursue environmental and community protections related to the existing regional social trail along the northern part of the Woman Creek Reservoir Authority parcel. So that was March 17th. So staff then engaged with the Jefferson County staff and project members, and that resulted in an April 14th information memo to City Council where we endeavored to describe that we had been successful with those negotiations and that there were to be community and environmental protections installed on the Woman Creek Authority parcel, so our land that would respond to what we had heard as concerns from the community around what would happen when foot traffic started to use that bridge, and that traffic started to land in our open space. And right now, and then Director Otzelberger is going to walk through. We don't have a presentation tonight, but there is an aerial image that's very helpful to help visualize what's happening up there on that piece of property, and then some imagery, some of which Mr. Otzelberger took this morning, so very relevant in terms of what's out there today, and then an image of what would be the result of the installation of these protection measures, and they may be different than what the words describe. So I think that's why the imagery will be helpful. But for clarity, tonight is a good time to check in with City Council because no work has commenced on our property, with the exception of the burrowing owl survey work, which will take up to 3 weeks to determine whether there are or not there are burrowing owls in this area. If there are, that would delay any potential work by some period of time. If there are not, then the work would not be delayed. So City Council, this is a good time to check in with you. And if there is a clarifying direction you want to provide to staff, this would be a great time to do it. Hopefully that's clear. And then Mr. Otzelberger could walk through, I think he has only got 3 images. So you want to just start and show us what's out there today and what this map is showing us.
Absolutely. And if it'd be helpful, I'll talk from here, but if it'd be helpful at some point to reference, I have a top spin stick from the game at Orchard Park Skyline Vista, if we need to point. But this map is helpful. So if you look at the upper far left corner, you see the little blue line across Indiana. That is the Indiana crossing. And then the lighter color is the start of the proposed roughly half-mile of trail hardening, and that would be kind of enhancing environmental protections on the half-mile stretch of natural trail that's out there today. And you see there's to minimize slope and grade, there's a little bit of a new alignment in that upper left corner, but then it hooks up with that dark green trail. And what you see in this entirety, so the black line, is kind of going on the outer perimeter of a chunk. That is the Woman Creek parcel itself, and then in the border to the west, to the north, and to the south follows the 600 acres of the Westminster Hills open space, what we're calling the sensitive management area. So out of the decisions last year, roughly the 400 acres and change, that's for the dog off-leash natural area. This is the 600 acres for preservation and other recreational use. And so you see that the black line jut in and go down, but in full disclosure, I'm partially colorblind, so I'm probably not the best person to be talking about colors. No. Yeah. Well, is it okay? I'll go with it.
The peach color.
Eric, I also am, so maybe it would definitely helpful.
Can't be a fighter pilot or drive a school bus.
Partially, yeah. Oh. Red and greens.
No way.
So just for sake, Indiana Crossing, the little bit of the here, once again, because there's a pretty significant slope and grade, and the overarching goal here in the spirit of environmental and community protection is to minimize disturbance. This green trail, it's a natural trail. It's not developed. And you go around Mauer here. This is all what we call designated trail, but it's been naturally created by use. So this, from this stretch to this stretch, is really what we're talking about this evening. It's roughly a half mile. What you see here, and if you've been a user before, you know this might be helpful. So this is where the light green, the existing Crusher Fine Rocky Mountain Greenway Trail is. This is the border with, up here with Broomfield, the crossing and the kind of the dead end with the existing Crusher Fine. So what we're talking about is this alignment here. This outer perimeter, this is the entirety of the roughly 600 acres of the sensitive area, and the Woman Creek parcel is this black line following here. Now the red lines that you see, those are all undesignated social trails, and in the spirit of ongoing restoration, those would be restored and access would be restrictive to those. But hopefully, so this gives you kind of an overarching view of what we're talking about.
Wait, is the dark green also a social trail?
No. So
It's unimproved.
It's unimproved natural trail. So this is affectionately referred to as the Prickly Pear Trail, Mauer Connector. From a trail sustainability and a lot of gravel, there's gravel cyclists, mountain bikers, hikers kind of use that. So there's been no formal construction or development. So it's been created in a similar fashion to the social trails, but they're in their native state.
I have a question. So are you saying that we're moving that social trail up so that way it lines with the bridge? Or is that already there?
It's more because of the slope.
So that trail is not already there?
Correct.
Okay.
So this would be, it's sort of a game of trade-offs. If you were to follow this, there's a pretty significant slope and grade that would lead to more disturbance.
I have an issue building a new trail to line up with the bridge.
Eric, my understanding from Joe Real was that there was an archaic, it's not as actively utilized right now, but there is a partial, kind of like an archaic trail.
Yeah. No,
in that area?
To Deputy Manager Opie's point, I apologize, I'll clarify. So as you move from west to east, there is a faint social trail here. It becomes more defined with more of a single track trail. And as you approach this connection here, it's really a double track trail. And I have an image in the next slide that'll show kind of that double track. So the amount of use over time, there's been more use here, whether it's an out or back. It's not, so
there has been some use connection there, but once again, trying to minimize disturbance.
One more question. So the Broomfield portion, that's the yellow that kind of stops. What is the black and red, whatever thing, trail?
This is undesignated, undesignated social trail on the Broomfield side.
So there's already an undesignated social trail that leads to the bridge area?
From Broomfield?
On Broomfield property.
Okay. And that's people would still use?
I'll say that from what I understood, I'm going to redirect us to the seating on either side of the trail that we discussed. Was that only for this section of the social trail, or was that for the whole of the trails throughout Westminster that go through our city's land?
The scope of the current project is from this point to this point.
Okay. So from my understanding of our council decision, I believe that we do not want to do any work to create that even if it is a social trail. I am not for putting work or energy or dollars into helping that trail exist, right? Because essentially the stance is a boycott against that trail existing or connecting to that bridge. And so my understanding of putting crusher fine and creating that trail leading straight to that bridge is that we are still essentially helping this county and state's project. And so I believe that that is what we do not want to do. Personally, when I saw the vegetative soil on either side of the trail, I am a big proponent of that piece of it for the rest of the trail that already exists, because that helps reduce the effects of contamination in the wind. And so that was the idea there, but it wasn't, the idea was not, and I, depending on where the conversation goes, I might be open to putting that on either side of this social trail, depending on how well it's used, I guess. But the whole idea is to reduce use. We're not advocating for this to be more of a trail than it already is. The only other discussion I'd be open to is rerouting the trail. And I would need perhaps more input from yourself. We do have some suggestions from the Guardian folks on how to reroute that trail. And so maybe we discuss that.
And take the Greenway Trail totally out of the Westminster Hills open space is what they were talking about doing. Right?
I believe so, yes.
Well, if it's acceptable to Mayor and City Council, so maybe the next two slides are helpful just to get some images. And then if, with your indulgence, I could come back to this slide to just show the Guardians have presented 3 alternatives, and I could show you physically where those alternatives are.
Okay.
This next slide is helpful. They're numbered, so I'll refer to the numbers in the lower right-hand corner of each image. So in this is the existing natural trail as it exists today. So slide 1 shows the erosion. So on the right side, you can see kind of the slough off. We call that substrate. So there's not much topsoil in an environment like this, but there is. And as the gravel riders, mountain bikers, hikers have come through, if you're familiar with mountain bike culture, you hear the refrain, keep single track single. This is no longer single track. Slide or image 2 in the lower left corner shows a little closer image of that trail just wearing down. You see the item 1 or number 1 there is really the intended path that has been expanded from 2, what the old path was, kind of sloughing off there. As you approach, you head from west to east. The third image in the center of the slide shows the existing designated natural trail, and that red line across shows the 15 feet where the improvements, the 6 inches of crusher fines, the geotechnical liner, and seeding would occur. Once again, that's a 10-foot trail surface with a 2-foot shoulder, roughly a 2-foot shoulder on each side. The upper right-hand corner is the existing natural trail looking from the east, from the Indiana crossing. So you see that there is a trail that does exist. And then the lower right-hand corner, number 5, is shows that little spin-off to the right with the no-no by it. That's an existing, so the trail that goes off to the left is the designated natural trail that's contemplated here. That one that goes to the right, to the south, that's a social trail that, as part of this, to try to keep folks on trail, would be closed. And the question has been raised of what would this really look like? So this is an image that I took today on the refuge on the west side of Indiana that shows the footprint. So just to show that image compared to what we have today. Yeah. Now, if it's okay, I'll show and then open it up for your discussion and questions, but show the 3 alignments
or 3 alternatives proposed by the Guardians. So their first alternative, and we've been in collaborative conversations with them, and we're really wrestling with 2 issues here, and seeking your direction this evening on environmental and community protections. The second issue is really how do we mitigate potential use conflict within the dog off leash natural area between folks with their dogs, cyclists, and others. Because the existing improved Rocky Mountain Greenway Trail goes through the heart of that 400-acre dog off-leash area. Alternative 1 that was proposed by the Guardians would take the connection along this existing designated natural trail, Prickly Pear, around Mauer, and then connect. This is the access road off 100th and Alkire to this is the Brow property where we have staff, our open space and forestry staff, outside storage, the limb recycling, and all of that. So that's alternative 1. Alternative 2 would contemplate keeping this alignment coming down and then getting to the edge. Once again, this is the border between the dog off-leash natural area and the 600 acres and heading due south. This is the existing concrete improved trail along 100th. So alternative 2 would do that. Alternative 3 is very similar, except it would swing out into the dog off-leash natural area and transcend conservation easement that we have on the sister's property, once again with the goal of connecting to the 100th Avenue Trail. Now, just a disclaimer for any of those alternatives. As you know, there are many partners involved with this endeavor, so any official reroute would have to be a collaborative effort. But those are the 3 physical alternatives that the Guardians have presented.
Do you want to talk about your talks with your thoughts when you thought you were thinking with the crushed stuff and whatnot? Who's paying for that?
Yeah, part of the clarification we can provide tonight is the negotiations with the county, which went right back to the root issues of the clarifying the deed title, the title to the deed for the Woodland Creek Authority property, included us having them pay for the community and environmental protections related to it. So if those advance now, then those improvements would be done at no cost to the city. If there's a different option for us, either now or later, those would be the city's responsibility to pay for, if there are any. So the second part of that, if there are any, would be the option where nothing occurs on the site other than the bridge landing on the Indiana right-of-way to the east of that right-of-way, and then we wait and see what happens. I think what our open space professionals are telling us is, without a barricade or a block, people will look to creating and enhancing the social trail connections to other trails. And so they will see the connection likely to the east as being a viable route for them to develop. And that was the thinking behind getting the county to put in that the geo layer, the crushed road base or crushed fines material, and then the 2-foot native plantings on either side, predicting that there will be a social trail develop beyond what's there today. And what Mr. Otzelberger pointed out was that the dark green band, which is there today, to put the money there, the project's money there, would have a lot more disruption, because you can't see it in the aerial, but I understand that to be much steeper there. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the grade issue is cut and fill operation on a trail versus laying it in where it's flat, which is where people will walk. If you think about social trails, they go where it's the easiest and most direct way from one point to the other that they see.
Is there when we talked about improving the trail to make it more stable, I think that we all were kind of like, okay, I mean, that impacts, or that creates less carriage of the particles potentially. I guess I just didn't envision it being as wide as the image that we saw. In my brain, I was thinking social trail with a little bit of stuff and, just kind of covering, I don't know, I thought it was like 4 or 5 feet or something. I just didn't envision it being like this 12 to 14 foot. Yeah, like the massiveness of it, because that does throw me off, because it seems like a lot of activity in relation to the existing social trail. I just thought we were like fortifying the social trail to make it safer. That's my one cool doing that. And I feel like that's given the white portion of the trail, I'm assuming people are going to walk that way and create another social trail, and it's inevitable, and we should just fortify it. But fortifying to the extent of the next slide was not what I envisioned. But
can I piggyback off you?
Yeah.
If I think about, in terms of what was in my head, maybe, but if I think in terms of, if you don't want to disrupt that native, you would want a wider, because otherwise, I mean, how often if you have a more narrow one, I think about, say, the path around Kenner Lake, you have to deviate if like somebody has a dog or whatever and you want to get around them. I mean, if you have a wider trail, you have that. The other thing that I think in my head, we were talking earlier about people potentially getting to go on a tour to the core Rocky Flats. I've been to the core Rocky Flats, and I can tell you a lot of what they've done is this kind of mitigation, because the way that they mitigate the soil from moving is this kind of action, especially along like the native grass and stuff, the way that they've planted to keep the earth from moving. My biggest thing is, what you're going to do for signage. But I mean, to me, this is kind of, it is a little bit wider, but like, it makes sense to me in terms of you don't want to disrupt the native soil. If that's what our intent was, and that was what I thought the intent that we told staff was, so.
Councilor Ireland's next.
Two things for me. I wasn't realizing that the path went right to the bridge, just like it was planned all along by Jefferson County. And also, why does Broomfield care about their social path? Is it flat like ours? People are going to take their social path if they don't take our social path. And they've left the trail too. So what does theirs look like?
So I can address a couple of these items in order, if that's okay. Mayor Pro Tem, so we could explore narrowing. The footprint is similar to the existing Rocky Mountain Greenway trail. And this middle slide, once again, this is as you approach the existing Greenway trail, the double track. So it just, I know that this image, it's kind of wide angle, looks maybe a little wide, but from another perspective, shows kind of that the 6 inches of outside material would be covering kind of the existing footprint, which gets progressively wider as you move to the east. Once again, want to acknowledge it's pretty narrow in the west, and then it turns from single track to double track. Real quick with Councilor DeMond on the signage, I did want to share an update. Our colleagues at Boulder County have been taking the lead in a collaborative effort around consistent signage through the corridor, and we expect to see draft language with that in the next week or two. So we should have something specific to share. And Councilor Ireland, to your question, so both with our alignment and the existing social trail on Broomfield, it's sort of a plateau, if you will, out there. So it's flat-ish. There's nowhere where the slope is more than 5%. But as you go south on the Woman Creek property, that's where the grade really starts to fall off. So it is a fair point that as far as topography, it's a pretty flat access point to the north.
Thank you.
Is there a fence between us and Broomfield?
So there is a fence. We're confirming it today, and we're doing some additional. There are two fence lines, one where there are postings, one where there's a legitimate fence. The opening where you see that the square and then the yellow line, that's the opening with the Greenway Trail through that fence line where folks go. So it's the official designated trail there, where you see the yellow end is kind of the dead end, if you will. However, users have continued that with the black line to the social trail to the west.
Councilor Zadi?
So I want to start with a thank you for bringing this forward, Jody, so quickly. I think we should acknowledge that this was in direct response to last week, and to staff who's worked on this, and Jody with your negotiations to get us here to this free kind of improvement situation. However, from hearing everything you've said, from hearing the public, from remembering our intent as a council last year when we were going through these talks, I think this is a classic case of vision and intent not really aligning, right? What we're seeing as the vision is not aligned with the intent of what council was. The intent was to make this social trail safer. But I think in the implementation, what we're seeing is something that has created a lot of confusion, public confusion. The perception of what's happening, and from what you're showing us, is actually different from even last week, from what I understood the memo, because the memo was not written clearly to actually show that this is what's happening. It's not aligned, not with my vision, and I'm sure with some of us here. I think this risks the perception that we have reversed course, even though in actuality we didn't. But if we do this, we might as well have just done whatever we did, not done what we did last summer. So I actually think the biggest issue is the fact that it's the same stakeholder who would be doing the bridge that's going to do these improvements. And there's just a lot of red flags here, and I would like us to stop the project, stop this social trail, and just figure out on our own, not via the county or via the Fish and Wildlife. I think we can figure out on our own in some future date how to make this safer, but to dig up and to do this work, to make it this wide, to Mayor Pro Tem's point, and the fact that all we wanted was to minimize the disruption of the soil, right? But to do this project, we're going to be disrupting the soil, right? And we're making it easier for all these bicyclists to bring whatever's underground, let's just say, from the bad part into the good part, which is Westminster. We don't want that. It's not, and there's speeding. There's a lot of speeding. So to me, the bigger issue here is signage. And I don't really align with having Boulder figure out signage for us. I like the idea of consistency, but I think this is an important enough topic where council needs to decide or to really have our fingerprints on what that signage looks like. Because I don't know what Boulder's working on, and I think it's our land. We should figure out a custom set of signs that we need that doesn't impede, as promised in the agreement, but tells the truth as to warn people what's happening. So I would like to call for a stop of this project, this social improvement.
Yeah, I would have to agree with what Councilor Azadi said, because what we're essentially doing is we're telling them, okay, go ahead and build that piece of the Greenway Trail that we said that is not going to be in Westminster, and we're just not going to call it that, but it's still there anyway. And by them paying for it, they're just getting, it's like we didn't make a decision. It is reversing. It's completing the trail that we said we weren't going to complete. And I think that it's important that when we tell our residents something, that we stand by what we tell our residents and we stand by our decisions. And this is essentially not standing by what we've told our residents that we've done. So I agree wholeheartedly with Councilor Zadi.
I just ask, how would they disrupt the current soil if they're putting things on top of it?
So, Mayor, the goal is minimal disruption, but in making the improvements, they would be working a little bit with the soil with a skid steer. So it's, and of course there would be minimal construction equipment, 3 to 5 workers out there. It's sort of in the effort to harden and create a more sustainable long-term trail. There would be some short-term disruption or disturbance.
And if we do nothing, the bikes that go through there, and I've seen some of the tires that have big in between all of their treads, then that soil just goes wherever.
Correct.
Member Tim.
So just to continue the questions the mayor started. So the improvement, you would have to do some type of grading or I guess like clearing to expand this footprint. Is that right?
Mayor Pro Tem, there would be some minimal scrubbing, so you have a level surface to work with, and that's just want to clarify, and this has been communicated before too. All environmental clearances need to be met for this project, and that is why going above and beyond with air quality monitoring upstream and downstream on both sides of the project would be conducted, because if there was something, that the project would have to be halted.
So the layering of whatever the material is that would be placed on top of the social trail, that would somehow be less to the mayor's point of just the bikes going through, like they would carry less of the trail. Or, I mean, like, still looks like dirt, and that it would, but it's like it's not.
So it,
How does,
and I apologize for the confusion, and we'll take ownership for that with the term road base. But really, when we talk road base, it's crushed rock with adhesive, so it binds and holds together better, and that basically the scope of the project has 6 inches of that outside material placed on top, so it sort of encapsulates the native material there, so it's not on-site material, because while our property isn't Rocky Flats, it's Rocky Flats adjacent.
well, I mean, I mentioned it in my last comment, that I just feel like we're going to end up with the social trail being more ingrained in the white area once is the bridge there already? Sorry.
The piers are there, the bridge decking is not.
I don't know. I'm looking for like what I had in my head, which was less disturbance and less of a gateway. I mean, that's like one of the things that we were all concerned, like, just we didn't want to put a lot of effort into encouraging people to go across the bridge. And I understand like mitigating that area for safety, but I don't know if there's a way to fly casual on it, but I just prefer not to make it such a huge improvement so that, Councilor Azadi and Hot's points, like, it does make it feel like, it is, the visual perception of it is just very wide.
I know when we were working on the Who's group, they took us out to this area, and without a ranger, and even the rangers that were out there, and we saw people, I mean, you had do not go here, and you had the crosshatches with wood and whatnot, and they just walk over them, around them, or whatever. So you need to go out there and just look, because it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Do you want it to be as safe as possible for anybody that's out there, or you want all of this stuff tracked into all the rest of the stuff? So.
To your point, Mayor, that's kind of what's going through my head right now. So I have a few questions to clarify a little bit more. The air monitoring that was mentioned, when would that stop? Would it ever stop?
Well, Councilor Carmelia, the existing scope is for the project. I think if there was a desire to go above and beyond that, that's something we could evaluate and take on as a city.
Okay. That's been an ongoing concern that I've brought up several times, is what would be the cost for us to have continual air monitoring of that site, no matter what. The fact that we're only going to put it up during a project, it's so counterintuitive. It blows my mind, because we're causing a problem and then going to monitor the problem. It'd be really nice to be more preventative in our actions. To the points of Councilor Azadi and Hott, I wholeheartedly agree that my instinct says, this looks like a reversal of our decision, and that's what I initially said to you. It's really hard to get on board with that when this is exactly what we did not want. I'm also trying to understand what the impact of our decision might be if down the line in 2 years we come back and say, the social trail is being used and we didn't prevent this dirt and erosion going up into the air. So I'm just trying to take all of the information into account, which is hard to do. So to help me understand, are we only laying down road base, or are we also going to be laying down soil and seed?
Good question. So the intent, outside seed, laying down seed, it's a seed mix. There's a specific scope that includes native vegetation, native fescue, buffalo grass, blue grama, things of that nature. Being out with the project team this morning, there's Yeah, I mean, basically this desire outside road base, using the outside seed mix, to the degree we needed outside soil to basically encapsulate that footprint. So and I want to acknowledge this is a difficult issue with a difficult trade-off from the standpoint of while taking a minimally invasive approach, is short-term disturbance to create a more sustainable trail worth it, or is it better to just leave well enough alone? But as we've seen with use patterns and, from some of those images, we do have users. There's a fairly passionate gravel bike community that likes to use loops there, and just going to see further erosion on what's out there today.
And then to the point of who's covering the cost, do we have an idea of what that cost is if we took it on ourselves?
So well, and working on some other trail projects, as sobering as it sounds, to a mile of crusher fine trails can be in the ballpark between $500,000 and $800,000. So, on the low end, I mean, I think, if you look at this specific section right here, we're looking in that range.
Prorated. This is not a mile, so.
No, this is a half mile, so.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. I just want to bring up that I don't think we're going to go down this route, but we very well could. I think that we're fortunate that we're discussing this at all, because we could very well say, cover that up with soil and seed and get rid of the trail, right? And then just, because that was our goal, and that is our goal. And so I just want to say, like, that could very well be the path we chose. And I think that mentally that's where our decision and our vision was, considering the fact that we believe that this social trail will exist and that people will probably go right through that and recreate another trail in a year. It does make me pause and think, okay, what is the best way to mitigate pollution to the air? If the soil can still be whipped up, then does gravel keep it down? The point is, though, to Mayor Pro Tem's point, that creates a big old gateway that we were trying to avoid. A big part of me is really in favor of just redirecting down the road, down that dark green line, and having folks go up the road, and saying, we didn't approve the bridge to be here. We didn't approve this trail. Folks can go around. I think that's where I'm at this point. But that still means, I think that still means that we would be laying down gravel and sod, and the money might not stretch that far. So I'm just saying all my points. I don't know exactly what else to say. I think that we're in a really hard spot right here, and I think that we have to do the best with what's been given to us. I'm going to let someone else speak for a little bit, but my heart is not for this at all.
So if I could piggyback off that real quick. The reason why I'm not for the reroute now is because that would take multiple other stakeholders agreeing to it. But what's in our control now is to at least pause on this and figure out, right? That's why I think that's a longer conversation. But this one is, let's not make it more attractive for folks to come into the city by making this nice social trail.
I'm sorry, Lynn.
I just want to know how this all came to be. Because I feel like there was deception here. When we got the land back from Jefferson County, was this part of the deal that we were going to allow them to build this trail to the bridge? I want honesty here.
Absolutely, Councilor Ireland. So that agreement, the city pledged it would not block access to the Indiana crossing, and it would, at a bare minimum, allow the existing natural trail to remain.
So we have to leave the trail. We can't throw seed over it and grow something else.
Can, but they'll ride over it. Councillor Demott?
Sorry, may I also answer Councilor Ireland's questions, because I was at the table with the county commission, with the county manager. No, the agreement that was brought to City Council was the agreement, and that was the clauses that were negotiated between the two parties to have the deed, the title to the deed for the Woodland Creek Authority to be clarified, to be entirely in our possession. And what the city agreed to is in that agreement, which is that we would not block access to the bridge that was being constructed. So if you'll recall that what the city withdrew from was the crossings agreement. It wasn't actually a trail agreement, it was a crossings agreement. And so the crossing was theirs, and it was landing not on our property. So we didn't have, you recall this part of the discussion, we did not have the authority to block the landing of that bridge if it didn't touch our property, which it doesn't. And so we did not agree in that agreement to any of this. What this is the second part of the council direction that night, which was, we thought, responding to concerns, and maybe we misheard them, and you've clarified tonight, Councillor Carmelia, that you were referring to other sections of existing trail to protect. When we looked at it, and in our experience with this open space in particular, and that red network of social trails, people will make a trail from a point A to a point B, and that's what we were endeavoring to protect. So we did negotiate for the project using its economy of scale and existing contractors and existing air quality monitoring equipment to propose to us a resolution to this concern. So the bridge is going to land, and how do we mitigate the social trail impacts on our lands? We can walk away from this.
So we went to them, they didn't come to us to pay for it.
Correct. So, but we, just to be clear, the reason we're here tonight is, the burrowing owl work is going to take another 2 to 3 weeks to survey those impacts. And so it's a cost to the project, to the county and their partners. And so we could probably go and tell them, save your money. If we do that, I can't remember which councillor referenced this, it might have been you, Councillor Carmelia, we may be back in at some point to address the evolving social trail as it does evolve, or not. It can stay that, it can produce. The scale of those images is unfortunate, but there was one with a red arrow a red line with a red arrow on it, which is the same width as what is shown in the other thing that looks like a 4-lane highway, but it's just the scales out on those photos.
So we are able to cover up the existing social trail if we wanted to. That's not part of the deal to not cover that up. Just cover it up if we wanted to.
That's what's being proposed, is that image number 3 would be covered and with a liner, and then the road base, and then the 2 feet of seating on either side. It would, however, if you go back, Eric, it is the white line, so it does do what Councillor or Mayor Pro Tem Nurmela described, right? It would be a very visible connection, pathway connection to the existing trail a half mile to the east.
So my question is, when we agreed to not block access, did we agree to that specific access point? Because there's other accesses to that bridge through other trails. So is it that specific access right butting up against the trail that we agreed we wouldn't block? Or by saying we're not blocking access, not building that trail, or even covering up that trail and making it appear to not be a trail, we're still not blocking access. So when you say that our agreement was to not block access, is that at that point or just at any point? Like, do we have to have that point of access in our agreement? Like, what was the agreement?
We get the attorney to weigh in on the language, but
I have it pulled up in front of me if you guys want to.
We believe we kept it pretty general in that we wouldn't block access, meaning we weren't going to barricade or block the bridgehead on our property.
You want to read
is
it?
my understanding.
Yeah, that's why I was, so on item 3, which is regional trail. For purpose of this agreement, the term regional trail shall mean a natural or hard surface trail or trails located on the property which may consist of one or more social trails created by normal non-motorized pedestrian, foot, bicycle, or equestrian use. The regional trail may connect to existing trails to the east and or south and or also connects to pedestrian bridge to the west that overpass Indiana Street, the Indiana Street Bridge. Westminster acknowledges Indiana Street Bridge is intended to provide public access to the property. Westminster agrees that 1, it shall not block or attempt to block public access to Indiana Street Bridge or property, and 2, that the portion of the regional trail which connects Indiana Street Bridge shall at all times be allowed to remain on the property, and Westminster shall not directly or indirectly, temporarily or permanently restrict, remove, or block public access to Indiana Street Bridge from any portion of the regional trail except as may be required pursuant to state or federal wildlife laws or regulations. Notwithstanding the foregoing, trails may be closed for maintenance for not more than 7 days unless otherwise agreed by the parties. That's what we agreed to.
Mayor Pro Tem.
So it seems like, I mean, what we agreed to was just to fortify the social trail to mitigate impact and to make it safer for our community. I'm still for doing that. I mean, I think because I think that's what we agreed to at that time. When I think about this trail over time and the impacts that it could have, if we can reduce impacts by being proactive, I think that's where we all were agreeing. I wonder if we can potentially work with, I mean, I don't know if we have them do it or not. I mean, you know, the federal, well, whatever they are. Too tired to remember the Fish and Wildlife. You know, to make it, what is it, 15 feet wide or 14, 10? It's 14. I'd prefer just kind of, you know, again, not encouraging people. We'd have signage. But to me, being proactive in addressing potential safety concerns, I think was where we were at. I'm still with that. Size to me, because I think they're just doing what they would do, right? Like what their typical trail is. Yeah, go ahead.
I guess I just don't remember the conversation that way. What we agreed to, as I read this, is there's a social trail, we're not going to block it. And we're not going to block access to the bridge. That's what we agreed to. And this is where I'm lost in the conversation, because I heard what I think staff heard, is that we said we want you to try to mitigate the kicking up of dust because people are going to use the trail. So, I mean, I was not surprised by what they brought forward, because I also thought that's what we asked. It is a little bit wider than I thought, but like I said, you know, to me that makes sense. And I think even if we didn't have this agreement where we're saying we're not going to block it, because I think if we did what you said, that would be violating this agreement in my mind. But if you just let it be, we have to understand that there's other erosion. And once that bridge is open, like it or not, there's going to probably be more traffic that go. Good, bad, or indifferent, I don't know. But I also will say I've lived in this neighborhood my entire life. And I can tell you the wind that kicks up over there is the bigger concern I've always had as far as what gets blown over into my neighborhood. And there ain't no bridge or path or bicycle that is the biggest problem when it comes to how that dust gets blown all over our community, and it never has been.
And I think we can talk about that, right? And we need to stop this and figure out how we can be more proactive. But this isn't what we asked for. And I think you have 4, so just to move this along, I don't know if we need to continue.
I think we need to seriously talk about the air monitoring, which we've ignored. To your point about the dust, I think it's a very real issue.
The federal government stopped a long time ago. I don't know their reason, but
I would like to know the burrowing owl situation. And maybe we wait 3 weeks till we hear that to figure out what we're going to do.
Is there any way to postpone this conversation?
I think to Councilor Zadi's point, we need an up-down. Either you want to stop and leave the social trail as it is, because that's what your option is, put signage up, or we want some matter of hardening of the trail. Those are your 2 options in my mind.
Yeah, I think those are the 2 options, and we shouldn't drag this along for the owl study. Let's make a decision.
How many want to just stop and leave it the way it is? Okay, we got 4.
May I clarify?
Yep.
But not stop on the signage. We'll bring back to you, and I want to acknowledge what Councilor Rosati said. We'll bring back what the Boulder County signage looks like, but we'll write our own signage. But we can make it entirely consistent, somewhat consistent, or we don't like it at all and we'll change it. So we'll still bring back that signage for you, right, to sign off on. It won't go ahead without you looking at it and agreeing to what's on those signs. But we are going to still do the signs. Yeah.
Is there some way we can monitor the condition of the trail over time? We're choosing right now not to safeguard it. So I would like us to I know you were talking about air monitoring. I don't know how much air monitoring is. I mean, I know where I work, it's quite expensive annually to do air monitoring. So, because you also have to have a consultant to read the air monitoring output because it's quite complicated. So it's not an elixir for this area, and to be able to determine, is it working or not. So how might we be able to just continue to monitor this area?
Well, Mayor Pro Tem, we can evaluate that, and I think we could contemplate potential strategies as part of our 2026 budget. And just want to state that things aren't mutually exclusive here. We were looking at some potential management strategies to keep folks on trail. So if we're moving forward with just letting the existing natural trail be, there's still some things we can evaluate, but from a resourcing standpoint, I would propose we look at those things and we could propose them as part of the budget for your consideration.
We can also bring back an historical review of the air monitoring that was done as part of the Rocky Flats progression and then cleanup efforts. It wasn't a city initiative. It did carry on for a time, and then I think with some certification or results, they discontinued it. But there will at least be some historical process where it was done and not continued. I don't believe that it sounds like the city has done air quality monitoring before. But so we'll do a little bit of we'll do some research on that and bring you back some information on what that might look like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think my suggestion would be let's talk to Broomfield, let's see if they'll go in on it.
Anything else?
I just want to thank the city manager again for bringing this forward.
Thank you. And I do appreciate the clarification tonight and apologize for confusion. There were a lot of moving pieces on this negotiation as we went through it, and we tried to map those through for you. But again, the time is right tonight to have had this discussion. So thank you for having it tonight with us and for us, and we'll do a course correction.
Thank you.
We have reason for executive session?
Yes, Mayor. There are 2 proposed executive sessions tonight. Before the public portion is concluded, I'd ask council to consider each of the 2 titles and vote to see whether we're going to convene exec sessions on them. The first is an exec session to discuss strategy and progress on a proposed economic development agreement, a proposed repurchase and post-closing agreement, and a proposed development agreement, each involving the proposed development of the Schoenberg Farm property at 5202 West 73rd Avenue in Westminster, Colorado 80003, and to provide instructions to the city's negotiators pursuant to Colorado Revised Statute 2464024E1 and Westminster Municipal Code 1113C4 and 7.
If there's agreement, please state your name and yes.
Obi, is that yes?
Amber Hot, yes.
Claire Carmelia, yes.
Christine Ireland, yes.
Steve DeMott, yes.
Sarah Normelli, yes.
Nancy McNally, yes.
And the second title for your consideration is an exec session discussion of a personnel matter, a quarterly check-in for the city manager pursuant to Westminster Municipal Code 1113C1 and Colorado Revised Statute 2464024F.
Again?
Obi, is that yes?
Amber Hot, yes.
Claire Carmelia, yes.
Christine Ireland, yes.
Steve DeMott, yes.
Sarah Normelli, yes.
Nancy McNally, yes. It is 9:41 and we close the study session.